All right, thank
All
you.
right, Kevin, you are recording. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Seeing that our recording is now started, I will call to order the special school board meeting for Monday, August 10th, 2020 at 6 p.m. We'll take roll call, and we have to do that virtually one by one. So, Mr. Bryant, are you here?
Present.
Mr. Christensen? Okay, hang on just a minute.
Mike, you are mute if you're doing anything.
Andy's frozen.
Oh dear. All right, we're going to pause for a minute because Holly can't hear anyone talking. Okay, Holly has left and come back in. Can you hear us now, Holly? I'm completely in the blank. I'll log out and come back in. So, can you hear us now, Holly? I apologize. We're experiencing some technical difficulties, it looks like. We're just waiting for Holly to join us. It looks like Holly has rejoined. Can you hear us now, Holly? Check, check, 1, 2. Holly, can you hear us? Lisa, can you send her? Okay, Mike is gone now. Oh dear.
It's to both Holly and Mike.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, can you give me that phone number to call in? I'll text them both that. Holly, can you hear us now? I see that you are back on.
Pam, I'm going to try calling both Holly and Mike to invite them to the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Two two 696.
Mike is back if his microphone works.
Right now, but if you leave a message, I'll be happy to call you back.
I just want you to know, as you folks are waiting, we did
Hey,
test out
now
the
I'm
system.
unmuted.
Oh, there you go, Mike. I wanted everyone to know we tested the system a number of times over the weekend, and we had no problems. So I hear that you're back, Mike.
Yep, I am here.
Awesome. All right, Holly, are you there?
Two 2016.
Maybe we should have some hold music.
We absolutely should. Mike, why don't you give us a song?
Gee,
Nothing like putting you on the spot.
sure you trust me?
I don't know.
I just want to make sure we can hear he's talking.
Right. I've been texting Holly to no response. Oh, good. Holly, are you on and can hear us?
Yes, I just figured it out.
Fabulous. All right. Thank you. I'm so glad you were able to get in. So
Thank
if this happens again, know that we will pause and not carry on until all members are present. So we've called the meeting to order and I was just on roll call. Let's start over. Mr. Bryant,
Present.
Mr. Christensen, you're on mute, Mike.
Present.
Yep. All right. Mr. Derricks,
Harlan's here.
Ms. Fair,
No, I'm not.
Here.
Ms. Jones,
Present.
Ms. Tower,
Here.
and chair is here. So all 7 board members are present this evening. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Indivisible.
Thank you. All right, hang on just a minute. I will read our vision of the Red Wing Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens. All right, the next item on the agenda is actually discussing the agenda. One thing that inadvertently got left off of our agenda is time for public comment. Usually, because this is a special meeting, we don't have public comment during special meetings, but I did receive 2 items for public comment this evening, and so I would like to add those if the group is agreeable. Both public comment issues, letters look like they'd be less than 3 minutes, so
Motion
I'm
to
hoping-
approve the,
okay, with the added addition of the 2 public
Second.
comments.
Yes.
Made by Mike, seconded by, was that you, Holly?
Yep.
Thank you. All right. Before we begin, I do have a statement that I'd like to share.
You need a vote?
I'm sorry,
Point of
point of
Oh, yeah,
order.
thank you. Thank you.
Need
Yep,
a roll call vote.
I know, thank you. Thank you. All those approving the motion on the table is to approve the agenda with the addition of adding public comment. Mr. Christensen, we'll start with you. Mr. Christensen? We're trying to vote on the approving of the agenda. All right, we'll come back to you, Mike, because you're muted. Mr. Derrick?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Aye.
Ms.
aye.
Jones? Oh, Mike Scott and I. Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Ms. Tower?
Pros.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. So thank you for approving the agenda with that one addition. Before we begin, I would like to share with you a couple of thoughts before to kind of get us started. First of all, I would like to thank the public for their support and feedback as we tackle an enormous amount of work in preparation for the upcoming school year. Yep, got it, Mike. We have heard all of your comments, poured over every email and listened to every voice as they have come forward. I think I can speak for the entire board by saying that your voice is extremely important to the decisions we make here at the board as we work our way through this pandemic. Secondly, I know many were disappointed or frustrated that a complete decision about the fall wasn't reached at last week's meeting. But in reality, a lot really was accomplished. This board passed a plan for K-4 learning. We agreed to open Jefferson. We changed grade configuration. We changed the high school to a true block schedule. We worked on a fair technology plan. We changed the school's calendar. We approved multiple staffing additions or changes. We added a 2-tier busing system. All of that to accommodate a very different kind of school year. Those are all monumental decisions that are extremely impactful to the year ahead. Any one of those decisions would have taken a long time to consider, let alone all of them in a short period of time. So thank you to this board for getting a lot of work done. Third, we have a big decision before us this evening, and hopefully we can complete our plan for grades 5 through 12 this evening. Inevitably, some of you will be disappointed in the outcome of tonight's vote. But I would ask this board, the public, who is very graciously supporting us, the talented staff of Independent School District 256, and the parents and guardians who support our students to remember that most or all of us have never faced a pandemic before. As we work to make the very best decisions possible, taking into account safety, best learning practices, space, and staff availability, I would like to remind everyone that we really do need to work together in a spirit of flexibility, togetherness, and maybe even compromise. Someday we may look back on this pivotal point in history and be judged not by the actual decisions that were made, but by the character and manner in which we could come together in a very unprecedented time. And lastly, I truly hope that following a decision this evening, whether you agree with it or not, we can model for our students that we are resilient, that we can adapt to things beyond our control and make the best out of a truly difficult situation. Our kids are looking to us, they're looking at us, and they are watching us for our reactions. They will take our lead, and I ask you to help us make that possible for every child in our school to be as positive as we can be. I'm asking for your help, and I thank you for your partnership and support.
Well said, Pam.
Jim, did you want to add to any of that?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I'll probably be a little shorter than you. I wish to comment on the last school board meeting emails, social media, and calls in regards to opening school. We've all received calls and emails in regards to what people want us to do about opening school. I will say this now and at the end. Not everyone will be happy, as the chair stated, as we decide as to do as we have heard from people that are in support of each of the three options. I will say that I missed the opportunity at the last meeting to bring back the motion for hybrid after the motion failed. I missed that. I'm a little bit better on parliamentary procedure, and I apologize for missing that. We've received a number of emails from people on what we like us to do. They are all for all three options. I've read all the emails and found that some people decided what I call take the high road and some a low road. I responded to some emails that took the high road. I even talked to some people who found that the people took to social media to talk about the board. As the emails state, family first, as this is the point that many emails sent to us. Not one of us will miss an opportunity to spend time with our children when we can. Those posts and email will follow you and cannot be taken back after being read by others. Whatever we decide, I expect our student population will probably decrease. If it decreases too much, that means we'll have to look at cost reductions, which could mean staff cuts. We don't want to do that, but that's something that'll always be on the table. In closing, we will make a decision tonight. I say this again, not everyone will be happy with what we decide. And as we all know, it may change during the year.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Well stated. All right, I have next, before we dig into the school plans for 2020, 2021, we've added in some public comment. And I have one letter here that I would like to read from Rose Jurdis. She has asked me to read it on her behalf. She says, I have a few questions and concerns regarding this school year. Student lunches in cafeteria. When staff serve food and beverages directly to students is on page 5 of the 2021 planning guide for schools for the state of Minnesota. It would be beneficial for students to eat in the cafeteria for a number of reasons. Students can remain with their class group and social distance, but be in one other room during the day. Eating in the cafeteria would improve mental health for kids by allowing them to eat in an almost pre-COVID normal setting where the atmosphere is relaxed. This would allow for kitchen staff to serve them fresh, hot, and cold items. It would eliminate extra work and cost of handling food and drinks being delivered to classrooms. Keep the food and drink garbage in the cafeteria and give some time for the classroom to be unoccupied for cleaning. Number 2, videotaping of teacher and distance learning needs to be more clearly shared. I understand that a teacher will instruct in room 1 while students in room 2 will see it live streamed. Will the distance learners at home be expected to view all of the day in real time? Will there be other material on Google Classroom for students to do also or instead of the live stream? When will teachers be able to connect with their students when they are teaching all day? Many parents and teachers are unsure of how this process will work, which causes stress and uncertainty for parents when choosing what would be best for their students' education. And number 3, can the school day be shortened more? Currently, the K-6 schedule is for a bell at 7:50. The first bell or final bell is unclear, with the end of day bell at 2:05. Could school end at 1:30 or 1 o'clock? Many students will be wearing a mask on the bus for an unknown amount of time through to the bus stop at the end of the day, perhaps 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Even with a reprieve at lunch and recess, that is a long time for a child to wear a mask or face shield. Less direct instruction time would allow more prep time for teachers or in-person and distance learning. The new Wonders curriculum replaces reading, science, and social studies. It will take extra time to learn the curriculum and its many options for differentiated learning. Additionally, some teachers have been moved to a different grade level. I want our teachers to be prepared and able to teach effectively for all of our students. Thank you for your consideration. And her address is 470 Friedel Crescent in Red Wing. She and her husband have a 3rd and 6th grader. So thank you, Rose, for your comment tonight. And then Wyatt, you also have a comment that you'd like to bring forward.
All right. Yes. Can you hear me all?
We can.
All right. So my name is Weston Wyatt, and I'm from 941 Carroll Drive of Red Wing. And so you can all hear me just fine and everything's sounding okay?
Yes.
All right. It said to mention if you're speaking on behalf of a group. I guess I have a co-author, if anything. It was she said her name carries a little weight amongst you. Her name's Kyan Corder. She helped write a bit of this. So if you know that name, she said I should name drop because you guys might smile. All right. I'll just get started then. Although I've already had conversations with a few of you prior to this board meeting, I would like to address you all once again as this issue is of high importance. The COVID-19 virus is extremely transmissible between persons. A single case in school facilities could easily cause a community outbreak. It is not appropriate to make a decision that endangers the health of students, guardians, and school staff. I would like to present data to you all regarding some of the risks of this virus. As of August 9th, according to the Minnesota Department of Health, the death rate in Minnesota is 2.7% for persons contracting the virus. Per Red Wing's latest census, over a quarter of all adults in Red Wing are senior citizens. The CDC has made it very clear that as age increases, your risk for severe illness also increases. In a recent study on transmission in South Korea, people living with COVID-19 patients between ages 10 and 19 contracted the virus at a rate of 19%, compared to the average rate of 11%. Considering this is the age demographic of our students in question, this statistic cannot be ignored. At this time, it is not logical to reopen our schools. We still have no vaccine for this highly contagious virus. We still can effectively teach students remotely, and we still have a civic duty to protect the health of one another. It is highly probable, if not inevitable, that a student or staff member will contract this virus. Transitioning from a reopened state to a state of distance learning only delays the education of our students. I urge you all to dedicate the district's full attention to the single safest learning option instead of dividing our efforts between multiple scenarios. I ask again that you reflect on the school board's mission statement. The mission of the Red Wing Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens. No part of this mission is hindered by distance learning, so I ask that you all make a decision that protects the health and well-being of our community members. Please do not sanction the spread of this virus. Thank you all for your hard work on this topic, and I trust you're all well-educated and doing your best, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wyatt. Appreciate your words. And say hello to Cayenne for us. The next item on our agenda is the school plans for 2021. So I will ask Superintendent Anderson to give us an update.
Thank you, Pam. I appreciate it. And thank you to the board members and to everyone listening today. I'd like to give a quick update as far as where we are. In June, Governor Walz directed school districts to develop plans for 3 scenarios: in-person learning, hybrid learning, and distance learning. We've done that. We're confident in our planning, even though we realize that no one's perfect and that we'll need to keep making changes regardless of the scenario that we are learning in. In July, in fact, just over a week ago, Governor Walz did give more information about how school districts can make the decisions in terms of what scenario we'll be learning in. Each district can generally determine what learning model we will use at any given time. But the executive order and the Safe Learning Plan provide some guidance on how to make those decisions. At least one time this week, district staff will review staff availability, COVID rates in our county, to see if changing learning models is recommended. We'll also be reviewing specific locations for virus outbreaks associated with the increase or decrease in cases. If needed, I can immediately implement a more restrictive learning model, such as moving from in-person to hybrid learning, because of those COVID rates. But at any time, the school board may determine the learning model if it's in-person, hybrid, or distance learning. So a week ago, the school board did make significant decisions, as Pam mentioned. We did decide to initially start the year in-person learning for grades K through 4. But board members, I think, wanted some more information, not only from us, but also their, the stakeholders that are important to all of us. So we spent the last week really reading those emails, talking to people to see what makes the most sense. And here we are tonight. I've heard so many comments, literally dozens and dozens of comments from people on all sides. And I will say that almost every email message or phone call has been positive in terms of, they want to do what's right for kids and staff members. They've also had well-reasoned arguments. And, I'm proud of the feedback that we're getting and the consideration that our board members are taking on this important issue. So we've had great feedback. After reviewing the data, my recommendation remains the same, and that is to start the year in hybrid learning with the understanding that we could move up or down based on the latest information available. So first of all, I just want to briefly go over some of the reasons why I think hybrid learning is the way to start. Hybrid learning compared to in-person learning obviously lowers the risk of COVID transmission because there are fewer student interactions and better social distancing. Starting in hybrid learning allows full implementation of some significant changes that we've implemented this summer for next year, including transportation, food service, technology, building changes, buildings and grounds, teaching and learning. All those areas are having significant impacts, and it would be better to start in hybrid before going to full-blown in-person learning. I view hybrid learning as a balance between in-person learning and distance learning. It's not being recommended because I'm trying to find a political compromise. Although really it is a compromise in many ways, but I think a different way of looking at it is that it is a good balance. We want kids in school, no question about it, but we also want them to be safe, and this is one way to do it. And finally, an important part that really hasn't been brought up, excuse me, if and when contact tracing is needed, conducting classes in hybrid will result in fewer people being quarantined. Shonda Jorgensen, the district's health and safety consultant, will provide additional information. Excuse me. I do want to go back and just cover a couple of quick things to better explain our circumstances. Oh, and by the way, first of all, I love sports. But right now I feel like all of us are playing in a huge stadium with 60,000 fans, and we don't have a playbook and we don't have a rule book. And so, I wish we could pull something off the shelf and say, well, this is how we do it with a global pandemic, or these are the rules of the game. But I think we all have to accept that things are in flux all over the country, and we need to learn this together. And we're going to do it well here in Red Wing, I have no doubt. A couple of quick things. First of all, my comments about social distancing at the last meeting. When we're in in-person learning, the expectation is that we should create as much space between students and teachers as is feasible during the day. But we will not be held strictly to enforcing 6 feet of social distancing during primary instructional time in the classroom. So that's the expectation. We would not have to provide the 6 feet of social distancing when we're in in-person learning. In hybrid learning, however, we have to limit the total number of people in our rooms and our buildings to 50% maximum occupancy, and we are expected to have stricter social distancing. There are different definitions of what that means, but typically the expectation is that, or one of the criteria would be no more than 15 minutes within 6 feet of another person because of the chances of transmission. That's often going to be used as far as determining some issues with contact tracing. So that's an important part. So my point to say, with in-person learning, we need to minimize those social interactions. But with hybrid learning, we have much stricter social distancing guidelines that we have to implement. So that's the difference. We can open up in person at the high school with grades 7 through 12 and meet the criteria of in-person learning. No doubt. We can do that. However, that means that we will not be providing strict social distancing in classrooms. It's just not possible. It's not mathematically possible to put 30 kids in a typical classroom at the high school, not only here in Red Wing, but most schools throughout the state, and maintain that 6 foot of social distancing throughout a class period. So we can legally do it. We can bring people in for in-person learning, all kids every day in grades 5 through 12, and we'll meet the standards that are listed for in-person learning set by the state, but it comes at not providing strict social distancing for our kids. With hybrid learning, especially our model of hybrid learning for grades 5 through 12, is that we would have our kids, half of our kids, letters A through K, last name, would come in 2 days per week. The other half of the alphabet would come in another 2 days per week, and then each group would have 3 days of social distancing. Therefore, we're able to split up each class essentially in half, and that enables us to do the stricter social distancing. So I hope that kind of clears that up. Maybe I'll just leave it at that, and if there are any follow-up questions, I'd be glad to answer. Once again, one thing I will mention is that there were some legitimate concerns that were raised a week ago. And I think what we need to do is at least come to a consensus that we will review relevant data every time we meet, and that we will seriously consider potential changes, either to in-person learning or to distance learning, based on various metrics that we could come up with. Some of the metrics that I'd like to share on a regular basis would be a review of the local county COVID rates. We're obligated to do that anyway, it makes sense. We also need to review staff availability on a regular basis. We need to look at our ability to conduct contact tracing. I know the city or the county is willing to work with us on that, but they also represent the whole county, other school districts and community members. That'll take a lot of staff time. So we really need to look to make sure that we can do contact tracing when we're required. We need to see how our masks are being used by students and staff members. That is an expectation that all people in buildings, unless there are very special extenuating circumstances, everyone should be wearing masks whenever possible in the building. And of course, we need to review how we're implementing our social distancing guidelines. So those are some of the metrics that we should look at on a regular basis. There are others too that may crop up depending on circumstances, but I think those are the primary ones. So if we could sincerely take a look at that data on a regular basis and have open minds to be willing to switch to in-person or distance, I think the recommendation is very strong. So what we could do is review the first set of data on September 28th at a special board meeting, or perhaps on the first meeting in October when we have our regular meetings. That's all I have, unless there are some questions.
Hello, good evening. So a couple questions, of course, Karsten. So you will be, I just want you to clarify, classes
Jamie.
in the hybrid would be separated by last name of the whole family, not by the class or grade, correct? Or can you clarify that?
Sure. What we will do for grades 5 through 12 is we'd have two different cohorts. One cohort would be kids with last names of A through K. The other one would be L through Z. Kids with last names of A through K would meet physically in the building on Mondays and Tuesdays. They would have distance learning the other 3 days. Kids with last names of L through Z would meet physically in the building on Thursdays and Fridays, and then they would have distance learning the other 3 days. So each cohort would have 2 days of instruction physically in the building and 3 days of distance learning.
But that's by family, not by grade.
Right. It's
Your
by
family together.
Yeah, it would be by student last name, but if there are two kids or multiple kids in the same household with different last names, and that happens, then we would work with that family to decide which cohort makes the most sense for them.
Okay. Thank you very much. That helps. I'm sure I'll have, oh, I'm sorry. My last question would be, I still have great concerns about the fifth graders and sixth graders and kind of that independence. Can you maybe give us some more information on what you guys have been working on this week or any updates on that?
For 5th and 6th grade in particular?
Yes, for those kids that would be left alone at a younger age, for possibly 3 days in the hybrid model. I'm still getting lots of concerns from parents about, their oldest child being of that age and just not being comfortable about leaving a child of that age on their own at home.
Yeah, initially when the administrative team started looking at potential options for next year, we earnestly tried to provide strict social distancing possibilities for all kids in grades K through 6. So we looked at our staff, we looked at our room space, and tried to make it work. And it quite simply came down to the fact that we didn't have enough staff and we didn't have large enough spaces in order to provide everyday instruction for all kids in K through 6. We tried the same for K through 5 and it just didn't work. Right now we're at K through 4. If we maintain adequate staff availability, then we can maintain that for the year. If we don't have the staff availability, then we'll have to make some adjustments in what we can offer each day. But right now, that's the spot where we're at. It's K through 4, but that could even change during the year. As far as in that model, we'd have 5th and 6th graders also being in school 2 days a week, and then we would need to rely on parents or the students themselves to provide whatever is necessary to make sure that they can participate in distance learning on the other 3 days.
But I guess Well, I guess it's still, Carson,
Jeannie,
as far
one of
as
the-
some of the questions are
Go
very
ahead.
specific to like, and again, I don't want to get too detailed, so I'm sorry to do this, but it seems like the right time to do it. But parents that are, emergency workers or such and different things like that, have we not, we don't have any alternatives for, 10, 11, and 12-year-olds to possibly have room somewhere else, or again, some partnerships with the Y or different things. And I know these are things they'll be working on, but that's still my main concern on having a whole grade 5 through 12 hybrid, is that we're leaving young children home alone.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. We will be following willingly following any governor directives as far as providing childcare for our emergency workers. We did not have a lot of 5th and 6th graders who participated last spring, but we do anticipate some, and so we'll be, Don Wettern will be working with those families to provide the coverage that first we want to provide, and then second for it would be in compliance with the governor's orders. So that would be through our program, Kids Junction. Now that would be during the day. Before and after school would still be fee-based, but childcare during the day for emergency workers when the kids are not in school would be paid by the school district.
And one of the things that I would just add to that, Mr. Anderson, is that I really do think that as we talk about our transition planning, we consider and prioritize the 5th and 6th grade as we go back to in-person learning. If we can't do 5 through 12 as a transition, then I hope that we would very much focus on 5 through 6 first, to make sure those students get in to everyday, all day learning like the K through 4.
You bet. Yeah, our focus has always been the youngest learners. Right now it's K through 4, but we'll try to bring in as many as possible during the year.
Thank you. And I believe Holly is next in the queue. Holly?
Yeah, thanks, Pam. Carson, that was kind of my same question that Janie asked, was if a family doesn't have the same last name, are there ways for people to work together so that if we do go hybrid, that the cohorts can resemble a family connection versus separating out? I hate to hear that, oh, it worked for these 7 families, but there was 2 that it just didn't work for because of X. So I was just hoping that if we go to hybrid learning, that's taken into consideration. So thank you. You did answer that.
Yeah, and Def, I'll reaffirm that that's really important to us. From the beginning, in fact, you see it in our transportation plans, our neighborhood schools, everything we're doing. We want our household units to be together because, that's just the right thing to do, is to keep them together because it minimizes the social interactions with other households. So yeah, really the biggest barrier is to get the message out to parents. And so they know that they can contact us so that we can make those adjustments in the cohort lists. But I'm very confident we'll make that work.
How are we reaching out to parents?
Yeah, either tonight or right away tomorrow morning, I'll be sending the first more comprehensive update as far as our plans. I wanted to wait until 5 through 12 was settled so that we could have one kind of more comprehensive update. It will provide the most important basics, like what schools there are, the starting and ending times, the calendar changes, what we're planning to do for K4 and 5 through 12 initially, kind of give an update as far as how decisions are made. So that will be going out in English and in Spanish tonight or tomorrow morning, depending on what time this meeting ends, actually. And then we have a working frequently asked questions list that we'll provide to families as well. Like I said earlier, we don't have a playbook or rule book, and so it will take continued time to kind of figure out all the answers. But as we define those, then we'll be sharing out with parents on at least a weekly basis, and maybe more frequently as we approach the beginning of the school year.
Are we going to look at having like a hotline, like one spot that families can just connect with and it gets to the key players?
Yes, I would like to. I'm not exactly sure what that hotline looks like, except we do have a version of that with our technology department. So questions about technology go to one email address, and then people working in that area can either answer or at least share out to people. Lisa Sturgurta is essentially in that role because most of the correspondence goes to her. And she knows our plans well enough to at least know who can answer that.
Okay,
So we're kind of working towards that.
okay, that would be great.
I know that most families, it's in the details. What does my child's day look like? Are they going to have recess? Are they going to have gym? Can they do music? Where are they going to eat? And all of those questions will be answered eventually. We just need to get through the basic overall plan first, and then we're going to work out the details. But part of the catch-22 is that for families to make decisions, they want to know those details too. So just bear with us as we get moving through this overall plan. All of those details will be given to you by your building principal and or other administrators as we work through the plan, is what I understand. Arlen, you are.
Thank you. Just like to direct this to the Kids Junction availability once again. Carson made the statement on emergency workers. Now, last spring it was available to essential workers, and if that is the case, I'd just like to clarify what essential worker is, and if that is the case, does that mean that Kids Junction would be available to essential workers on the 3 days a week that the 5th and 6th graders are not in school?
I'm going to let Dawn Wettern answer that question. I know she's on the call. I will tell you that we've been asking some questions to the state about some of these topics that we're talking about right now. And so I know there are a lot of questions across the state about exactly who qualifies and what the expectations are. But I'll let Dawn can answer what she knows now, but it could change by the hour or by the day.
Yes, the tier 1 workers is really essentially the emergency workers. It's the same thing, and it would be your tier 1, which last year the definition of tier 1 has not changed since last spring. And yes, we would be available the opposite days. So essentially we could be open 4 or 5 days a week for children in 5th and 6th grade. We can serve children up to the age of 12. And so they would have free care between the school day itself. And if they would want to have care before or after, then there would be a charge.
Thank you, Dawn. That was really helpful to hear that. Arlen, do you have anything else that you'd like to share or ask questions to ask?
Well, I think that clarified it. I guess I still didn't hear what that tier was. Does it include teachers, Walmart? It was deemed an essential.
Yes, Arlen, the list
so
is
that's all, but I took it to mean that. So I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Well, we can definitely get tier 1. The list grew as the time went on. So it typically is, teachers, emergency workers. Last year there were grocers in there, so we could have the list and have that defined. When we looked at it, it had not changed since spring. And so the majority of the people that we were serving last spring were tier 1 and tier 2. This time he's indicated tier 1, but that could change and he could open that up to tier 2. Like Karsten said, it could change, tomorrow.
Thank you, Dawn. Heidi, you're next in the queue.
Thank you. I wanted to echo your comments at the beginning, Pam, about the value of all of the input that we received from the community. Really helped, and it reaffirmed that I'm in support of the hybrid model. For the 512, based on that feedback and some of the concerns, I think that we're describing as this isn't just a decision about the school, this is a consideration for our community as a whole, and that exposure and mitigating risk. So I had an MSBA board meeting yesterday, and we all went around the table and shared, hey, what do you think your district's doing? When are you making decisions? And I would say most of them could meet in person, but many of them were exercising some caution, just concerned about the same things we've stated here, primarily student safety, staff safety, implementation change. So most of them are going a little bit more conservative than what their county numbers are telling them. And again, I think that parallels kind of our experience here about just stepping into this more carefully. I don't believe a question right now, but I'll reserve that right if I think of one. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Superintendent Anderson, anything else that you'd like to add, or should we talk to Ms. Jorgensen about her input in terms of safety?
I think it'd be a good time to have Shonda give her presentation. And by the way, just as an FYI, Shonda Jorgensen is our health and safety consultant. I did ask her firm if she could come some additional time in September and October, just to make sure that we're able to do our contact tracing, in every way we possibly can to make sure our policies and practices are working well. Because obviously we want all of our kids to be safe. And so for a couple more months, she'll be spending some extra time in the office, and she's been a great asset. So Shonda, do you want to go ahead and share your information?
Sure. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Shonda Jorgensen, and like Carson said, I'm the health and safety consultant for Red Wing Public Schools. I've been working with the school district since December of 2012. I'm usually a behind the scenes person. My job is to make sure that the district is OSHA compliant. And of course, with all this stuff coming up, I've gotten kind of more into how the schools are going to be run, what are our plans. I feel bad sometimes I kind of throw monkey wrenches at Karsten and the admin team, because I'm the one that says, well, what about this? What about that? And so I don't know how often they're excited to see me, but I do want to say that I do work with other districts, and my colleagues work with other districts, a lot of the bigger districts in the city. And Red Wing Public Schools has really, and their admin team, they've really stepped up, and they've been on the forefront of planning how to work with this COVID situation. I just wanted to point that out before I get started. But I'm currently on a team. We're called the COVID response team, and it's made up of myself, Joni Gorman, who is the new district nurse, Dawn Wettern, and also Sherry Johnson, who is the nurse over at River Bluff. But she's been appointed the official COVID coordinator for Goodhue County Education District. And like I said, I work with OSHA, and OSHA is requiring that all school districts have what's called a COVID preparedness plan. And part of that preparedness plan is we have to detail out exactly how we're going to handle a potential or positive case within our district. And I want to share with you how that's going to work, because I want to emphasize it's not a matter of if we're going to get a case, it's when. And how are we going to deal with that? And just, I want to show you how it's going to work with the scenario 1 or the all-in scenario, and how it'll work with the hybrid model. Obviously with social, if we do distance learning, we won't really have to worry about that because no one's going to see each other. So I put a little presentation together. It's not long. I just kind of want to give you some visuals, if that's okay. Let me see if I can get this set up here. Let's do this. Okay. It's really short. It's only 5-6 slides, so it's not a long thing. I just want to walk through the steps on how Red Wing Public Schools is going to deal with a suspected and positive case within the district. And we're just going to start, the first scenario I'll walk through is, let's say we have a kid in class and they're sick. The teacher notices they're coughing, they just don't look well. They should be sent down to the nurse's office, which happens every day. I mean, people are sick all the time. But what the nurse has to do now is then have a conversation with the student and see, do they have symptoms consistent with COVID? Do they have either a standalone cough, a standalone shortness of breath, or a combination of fever, vomiting, loss of taste or smell, a few other things on that list. And the nurse is going to determine, well, this could possibly be a case of COVID. We can't diagnose, but we can say you have the criteria that fits that. So what will happen is the nurse will contact the parents or guardian or whoever's taking care of this kid and say, you need to take this student home as soon as possible. We would like it to be within a reasonable amount of time, 20 to 30 minutes. You need to come get your student. Now, after we've determined that they have symptoms, they're going to go into an isolation room. So they'll be by themselves. The nurse will have visual contact with the student at all times, but we really need to separate that student from the rest of the school. The nurse will then now have to go look at their contact information and determine if there are any siblings or any other household members within the district, because they have to go home as well. A parent, a sibling, anything like that, because they are considered close contact, they live in the same household, everyone has to go home. So not just the kid that's showing symptoms, it could be, one person from every school. We just don't know. All situations are different. So that student will then be sent home and transition to distance learning for the next 10 days. They will not be allowed to come back for 10 days. And there is a decision tree that I'll show you here in a minute. This is where we're getting our information. But if they have any household members within the district, they will have to stay home and transition to just distance learning for the next 14 days. So just one potential case of COVID could send a kid home for 10 to 14 days, depending on if they were the ones with the symptoms or if they're close contact of the symptoms. This is the decision tree for people with COVID-19 symptoms in youth, student, and child care programs. This is how we're going to decide how people are going to have to go home, who has to go home, and how long they have to stay. So you could have a kid in school for 2 weeks straight, and then they're out for 10 days. Turns out they didn't have COVID, but they have to stay home for 10 days. They may come back. Now they have a sibling who has it, so they have to go out for 14 days, distance learn. So there could be a lot of switching back and forth just for one student. And this doesn't really impact, in-person or distance, hybrid. If the student is in school and they have symptoms, they will be sent home and that kind of thing. So we're gonna have a lot of fluctuation of people coming in and out. Even if we hybrid, even if we're all in. And this also will apply to anyone who calls in sick. I've been told by the nurses that sometimes they get 20 kids that call in sick a day. And if any of them have COVID-related symptoms, they're going to have to stay home for 10 days, and their siblings or household members will have to stay home for 14 days. And between the nurse and we're going to assign a building COVID coordinator and also a district COVID coordinator, we're going to keep track of who's going home, when they go home, when they're allowed back, that kind of thing, so we can kind of help control that. It's going to be, it's going to be a lot. Parents are also going to need to understand this before school even starts. So we need to send something out to them explaining that their student could one day and have to stay home for 10 days. We can't control that, and they need to understand that. So they need to come up with a plan on how they're going to handle it. Now, of course, there's exceptions to when they can come back. If they go out and they are diagnosed by a doctor for some other disease, strep throat, norovirus, that kind of thing, and the doctor can say for sure it's not COVID, it's this, then they may be able to come back a little sooner. But most probably people will be out for those 10 days or those 14 days. And I just want to show kind of a simulation. So those are for the potential cases of COVID. They're going to be out 10 days, 14 days. Now, what happens if when there is a positive case of COVID within the district? The district will find out about the positive case most probably from Goodhue County Public Health. I put in most probably there because we're dealing with people that don't necessarily live within Goodhue County. Some of our staff live in other counties, and if they're going to get a COVID test, they might go to Dakota, or they might, get a test in Wisconsin, and there may or may not be the best communication between those different counties. And so most probably we'll hear from Goodhue County Public Health, but we could hear from the staff member or the parent of the student, and then we will tell Goodhue County about it. And then the district COVID coordinator and the Goodhue County Public Health will work together on contact tracing and what steps need to be taken next. So let's start with a scenario 1 in-person model. Carson said that we're going to distance as much as possible. So what I should have done is moved all the desks all the way to the edge, that kind of thing, to show a little bit of distancing. But as you can see, there's a lot of kids in this class. There's not much room for distancing. So if the student is positive, hopefully they've been home for a few days, we will be told that, let's say student A is positive for COVID. We will work with Goodhue County and pull together what this class schedule, or what the student has done during the school days for at least, I think, the 48 hours before he was positive. So what classes was the student in? Were they in recess? Were they eating in the cafeteria? Can we show that he was social distancing? Can we show that they were wearing a mask? There's a long list of things that we have to go through to determine who has been a close contact to this student. If we go with scenario 1, and we can't social distance the way we want in schools, then any person that was within 6 feet of that student for more than 15 minutes will be considered a close contact. And now these 8 students will have to stay home for 14 days. If we can barely squeak it out, then maybe not, but I'm kind of trying to throw a worst case scenario at you. So student A is positive. We've gone through their schedule. It shows that these 8 students have been in close contact with student A, so therefore they have to go home. If student A is in one class for the entire day, then it only affects 8 people. But if student A is moving from class to class to class to class, so there's 4 different classes involved and they're all set up the similar ways, that could make it 32 kids that are going to have to stay home because they were considered close contact. Now, if one of those 32 kids gets a positive case, now we have to go back and redo the contact tracing, and they're going to affect another 32 kids if we're moving around in the school. If they're staying in the same room all day long, we're going to affect less people. When we're moving around, unfortunately, we're going to have more people that are going to have to stay home. Scenario 2, hybrid model. If we set up with social distancing in all of our classrooms, again, student A is positive for COVID. We do contact tracing with Goodhue, and we go through their schedule, and we determine that he has not been within 6 feet of any other student. Then the only student that'll have to stay home is student A. And so this will transition him to distance learning for 10 days, and no one else is going to have to go home or stay home for the 14 days after that. So conclusion, each new positive COVID case could potentially affect up to 33 students and or staff. If that student is sitting in the front row and they are within 6 feet of the staff may have to go home for 14 days because they're considered close contact. Part of what I will help the school district with is working with the county and tracking contact and trying to figure out exactly who has been affected and who we need to send home. All-in instruction could lead us to all distance learning faster, meaning if we have one student who has close contact with 8, those 8 have to go home. Now we have one of those 8 is positive. Now 8 people around them have to go home, and it could just snowball to the point where it's out of our hands and the county or Minnesota Department of Health will say you need to long distance, everyone needs to long distance. If we hybrid, we can have students come in for a couple of days, distance learning for a couple of days. So if there is a time when they have to stay home because they are positive or they are close contact, they'll already be used to distance learning. They understand how it's going to look. Parents will hopefully be able to figure out how to take care of their kids on the 3 days that they're home. So if they're home just an extra 4 days, maybe it's a little easier for them to plan out. So the hybrid model, if we have to send a kid home, they would really only miss 4 in-person days as opposed to the all-in model. They would miss 10, potentially 10 school days. And I just wanted to put at the bottom there that there will always be distance learning. A lot of people want to go in because they think they're going to eliminate the distance learning option, but there's kids who can't come to school. There's parents who don't want their kids to come to school. And there's kids who could show symptoms and they'll be out for 10 days. So they have to know how to distance learn. Just one more thing I wrote down while you were talking is like the 3 best things we can do to stop or slow down the spread of COVID is by washing our hands, by social distancing, and by wearing masks. And if we go all in, we're eliminating one of those defenses against COVID. And we just need to, if that's the choice that we go through, we just need to be prepared for the kind of, what could happen next and how it could kind of snowball into the state basically saying we have to distance learn everybody. So that's all I had. Are there any questions or concerns or?
That was a really fabulous presentation. Thank you so much. Mike, I believe you had a question or a comment?
Arlen was first, I think.
I'm sorry, Arlen. Thank you for
But
pointing
I don't
that
know,
out.
you might check. Mike might have gotten kicked out. I saw he left.
All right. Well, why don't we go to you, Arlen? Go ahead for your question or comment. I'll check on Mike.
Okay, I guess my question is, I get it if somebody has COVID symptoms, what the procedure is. What happens if that student goes to a doctor or a testing site, has a COVID test and tests negative? Does everything go back to normal as soon as that student feels fine, or do we continue the isolation?
It's recommended that the student with symptoms still stays home for 10 days, but the siblings will be able to come back to school because their close contact said no, it was a negative test, so therefore they shouldn't have it. Now, obviously, the student that went home sick is sick, and so let's keep them out just so their symptoms clear up and they feel better for when they come in. And that's based on that decision tree I shared. I can email that to everyone when we're done here, just so you can review that.
That would be great if we could get a copy of that, Shonda. Thank you.
For sure.
Mike,
Yeah, for sure.
Mike, you're still here and you were next in the queue. Mike, question or concern? Comment? Hello, Mike. I see you. You're still there. All right. While we're waiting for Mike, Janie, you're next.
Thanks so much for the presentation. That was great. Sorry for the feedback.
No worries. There might be a cat coming in. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I was wondering, can you share if we've had any positive cases at like Kids Junction right now? Because that was a very eye-opening presentation you gave us on, what can happen. But as far as I've, heard, we've been pretty lucky and blessed here in Red Wing that we haven't had any major outbreaks. So can you maybe comment at all on what's been happening in childcare centers and Kids Junction that has had kids in school right now?
Yeah, for sure. So, and I mean, Dawn, if Dawn's still here, she can comment. But as far as I know, in Kids Junction, now remember, we started working with Kids Junction and doing the socialization or the distance. I'm sorry, this is, and we've done hand washing, we've done sanitation, social distancing since March with Kids Junction, and we have had no cases. We did have a few kids that went home with symptoms, but they all came back negative. So we've been really, really lucky with Kids Junction for sure. And so it goes to show that we've already practiced kind of. We'll wait. Okay, are we there? So we've already practiced our hand washing, our social distancing, our sanitizing with a group of kids that are going to be the hardest to keep away from each other, to keep social distance. And so it does work. We just have to be able to do it across the board for everybody.
And I would just say that, you know, Justin and his team have been very good. We have some seasoned staff and some young staff, and they've done a really good job, but it is difficult. I don't want to say that it's easy, but they have been adhering to, you know, the hand washing and the social distancing. And they've also stayed in the same pods of 9 children and 1 staff person, so they don't mix those pods. So that also helps. Again, so you limit the exposure to other children. And so as we go into the fall, we'll be continuing that.
Don's done a really great job. The whole staff have, so.
Well, thank you, Dawn. I think we've got a lot to learn from you and your crew, and I appreciate all of your wisdom and what you've learned thus far. I think that we can learn a lot, and you can be a great source of support for us as we move forward. Mike, I'm sorry I passed you up in the queue. You're up next.
No problem. I think that was me feeding back. I was on my phone and on the computer. I entered my name before she got finished with the presentation because just seeing the complexity involved in tracing and having kids coming out and coming back in shows the wisdom of starting at a hybrid model where kids can be in person, where they can get acquainted with everybody and everyone that they're going to be spending time with, still socially distancing, and then a less chance, although if it does happen where there's a contagion, then they will still be getting the distance learning experience at the same time. So it's just such a modest thing to start. And I think it's really the only way to go, unless you're going all distance. And all distance, we're not in that realm yet. But with, anyway, so it just seems like the way to go, always has.
Well, and can I quick comment on that? I'm sorry if I'm going against procedure on how these work. If we start hybrid, based on the recommendations by the governor, it's based on cases per 10,000, and our cases in Goodhue are pretty low. But once they jump to, I think, 10 through 20, now we got to switch part of them to hybrid and this group all in. And now when it's, 11 through 20, now it's more people are hybrid. You know, it's a lot of jumping if we start with all in and just follow the guidelines. If we start kind of in a safer mode, we could stay in that mode a lot longer as our cases continue to head up, because they will. We're about 6 weeks out of 4th of July, and we're going to see some stuff happening, I think. So, just think about, what's going to be the least amount of disruption towards the students' learning. If they're used to all, being in and distance learning, when they have to do all distance learning, they're already going to know what they need to do. And it's going to be a lot smoother than having them jump from distance learning or all in hybrid, distance learning, hybrid, distance learning. If we're doing a lot of jumping, I think it's going to be harder for everyone, really. So that's all.
That's a really good point too, Shonda. Thank you. Heidi, you're next in the queue.
Is Janie ahead of me?
Nope, I went, Heidi. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Shonda, thanks for the information. It really spells it out quite clearly. One of the pieces that I didn't fully understand, so clarify for me, if you will. Some school districts overlap different counties. And so when we talk about county data, I was told that you have to go to the county, your starting point should be the county with the largest numbers. That isn't to say that you adopt everything, because we need to whittle it down. Where is it? what's the risk of, spread, that kind of thing. Can you talk a little bit more about how, we're not in this boat alone, that we are somewhat influenced by the counties around us and where those students are coming from. And so how is public health looking at that? Or how are school districts looking at, where their kids are coming from? Because we have some that might be coming from Wabasha County. They might be coming from Dakota County. I'm just need some clarity on that scenario.
Sure. So the guideline is if you are serving a population in different counties, you need to look at the county's number that is the worst, I guess I would say, or that has the highest cases per 10,000. And so a lot of districts who are crossing, obviously they're going, and they have, they have Dakota County or they have Hennepin County. They're having to choose to go hybrid or higher based on that, even though maybe most of their population doesn't come from Hennepin. That's because they have a larger number of cases from Hennepin. Your kids that are coming from Hennepin County are going to be in your district, and it just introduces a higher potential. Now, I'm not 100, I don't know where your population is coming from. We're kind of solidly in Goodhue. If we have some open enrollment from other counties, I don't know how we work that. And honestly, I'll tell you, we're just starting to work with the county. The county is setting up what are called regional cooperatives, which are in charge of working with the different schools within their county. And we'll have like a representative or a couple representatives that would be working with us as far as, doing the contact tracing or identifying positive cases, that kind of thing. So we're just starting to kind of figure out how this is all going to work. And obviously, as things change and we get to know more, you'll know more. I'll know more. But for right now, we're just told to take the county with the highest cases per 10,000 as the model that you should follow, and go from there. So unfortunately, this is brand new to a lot of us. So we're just kind of trying to figure it all out.
Exactly. And that's what I'm just trying to accumulate some information for my own edification here.
Sure.
So one of the counties or one of the school districts that I spoke with yesterday, they're located in Dakota County, right next to us, and they're going K-12 hybrid, but they said also Dakota County's numbers are climbing.
Yeah.
And so whatever decision they make, they're thinking they're going to have to remake that decision before the start of school. So it was just kind of a little bit of a lesson of, we're in a fluid situation. We're doing the best with what we have. But I'm very aware that we have, Wisconsin bordering us that has escalating cases, and we have a lot of work, living, travel back and forth across that border of the river. Same thing with Dakota County. We have employees who live there who come work here in Red Wing, and then whatever activities are also cross-pollinating people. So I'm just I'm trying to be aware of all the factors that are around us and how quickly that might change. So I am taking to heart your words and about trying to stay in that safe mode longer. So thank you. This has been very helpful.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Shonda while we have her on the line here?
And I am in the district. I am in there technically one day a week. Carson said I'll be coming back more. I really want to make sure that you guys, get everything you need to be safe. My job is health and safety, and I want to do everything I can for you. And I have a school email. You can email me questions at any time. If I don't know the answer, I do work with people who do my job in other districts. So, and I also can find out, how is Bloomington, how's Lakeville, that kind of thing, kind of how they're handling things. And I try to bring that knowledge to Red Wing and say, this is how they worked it. Maybe we could get that to work for us too, or just kind of strategies on it, how they're, handling things. So email me anytime.
Thank you. Before you head out, Holly, you have one question or comment?
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Shonda, so much for this information. How do you see kids on the bus handling with the social distancing and such, getting kids to and from school?
Right. And I think transportation was a big part of why of our concern, because if we social distance on a bus, you can have no more than 13 kids on a bus.
Right.
I haven't talked with transportation. I've heard the number that you can have up to 50% capacity. But can we maintain social distancing that way? Now, if we can get the kids to school in under 15 minutes, we could put more kids on a bus. But once we have too many kids for too long, now we've got contact tracing. I don't know what the new transportation rules are based on what the governor released, but Terry at bus companies, they're with us, and he'll let us know anytime things change. And Karsten, I don't know if you know anything new as far as transportation.
Sure. Most of our buses are 77 passenger buses, and we've come to the conclusion that we can go up to half. So that would be about 38 kids on a bus. Most of our buses now are running or will be running about 30 on a bus, but we are thinking that there'll be some opt-out kids, so it'll be under 30 for most buses. There's one exception, but we have a bigger bus to serve those kids. And the numbers I just shared with you are assuming that we are all in person every day, elementary and the high school. That's one of the expectations we gave to the transportation people. Give us a system that works regardless of the scenario. So those are the numbers that we'd have in person at the high school, or grades 5 through 12, half the time. Those buses will be significantly less ridership, and we'll approach the numbers that Shonda was talking about.
So to safely say, we basically have two scenarios: transportation, and then once we're in the building. And once we're in the building, we can safely social distance. But in order to safely social distance on the bus, we are looking at, we shouldn't put more than 13 kids on a bus for more than 15 minutes at a time.
Technically, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what the first student originally came up with, was 13. But if we're in a hybrid, like at the high school, for example, instead of having 30 kids on those high school routes, we'll have 15. But some of those will be opting out. And so we think we'll be right around that 13 passenger capacity.
What if we're not?
What if we're not? Then if there is a COVID report, let's say a particular student, reported the symptoms, went in for the test, has to quarantine for 10 days, then we'll be pulling the video. Well, first of all, kids are going to have assigned seats on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll be kind of a first on, last off arrangement in the morning. It doesn't work so well in the afternoon, but in the morning, that's the arrangement. And so that's good because they won't be walking by each other, when they're getting on the bus. But if there's a COVID case involving a student on the bus, then we'll pull the video for a few days to ensure that that student was sitting in the properly assigned seat, because that's an important part as far as determining who else needs to be quarantined and or tested.
And if we do have 30 kids, it's not going to be all 30 kids on that bus. It's just the people within 6 feet of that student. So it's not going to be everyone on that bus. It's just going to be, 5 to 6 people that we might have to pull. And it depends. I mean, if it looks like they've stayed in their seat and they've stayed away, we'll have to see. But yeah, the more people we have on the bus, the more people will be considered close contact, and we'll have to pull them from school.
Okay, that's what's always been in my mind, is the $1 million question: how to get them there.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Shonda.
Yep.
And Arlen.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This is not something I want an answer for tonight, but after hearing this presentation, which I greatly appreciate, Terry from First Student last Monday, I believe, stated that was either here or an operations committee that students would be loaded from the back to the front as the route progressed. And hearing this presentation tonight, if the student is not in contact is in contact, does not have contact more than 15 minutes with a student, then they don't have to do it. It might make sense to, based on that, to spread out the first student in the back of the bus, the second one in the front, the third one in the middle, or some other system. And on the other end, you do have the walk-by issue, just walking by somebody. But I would just hope that as you develop this plan further for everybody, that you take a look at that seating concept that we were introduced to last week. So thank you.
Well, and as far as if someone's just walking by and then we'll sit down at the back of the bus if the student's at the front of the bus, that's not considered close contact. So as far as walking by, it's not as big a deal. It's just we got to make sure that when they get to their seat, they stay in their seat and they're 6 feet apart. So there's a little leeway on that.
Shonda, would that also apply to passing time for the different cohorts in the high school hallways?
Yes, if they're out, you know, last I heard, I don't know what the number is, that passing times will be 10 minutes. That way we can get the kids out, like at the high school at least, we can get the kids out, we can sanitize the rooms in between classes. And if the kids are out in the hallway for less than 15 minutes, they're not considered close contact.
And I'm assuming, Superintendent Anderson, that the kids will be wearing masks during passing time in the classroom, so that will also lower the ability to share germs.
Yes, the expectation is that all students and staff wear masks.
Okay, any other questions for Shonda while we have her here? All right, seeing none, Shonda, thank you so much for your time. It was extremely important and valuable information. I think this definitely helps us to make some good decisions tonight. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for letting me or give me the time to let you guys or talk to you. So
very much appreciated. Thank you. Anything else that we can learn about Superintendent Anderson before we can make a motion for the resolution? Anything else that we can add to this, Superintendent Anderson?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking for more questions.
Oh, I
No,
was just saying if you have any other information to add to this presentation or anything else you'd like us to know before we make a resolution.
Again, the goal in all this is to get all kids back in school as long as they're safe. And the first step, though, is to make sure our system is set up, that we have strict social distancing, make sure the processes are working. If rates stay low, then I'm hoping that we all have an open mind to make adjustments. But, you know, first and foremost, we want our kids to be safe. And then we also want high quality learning. And our goal is to do both.
Arlen?
Yeah, I just got a question prior to a resolution here. Just 1 second. I want to figure out how to enlarge this question. I got to move my camera for a second. Okay, one person that emailed me this past week talked about concerns about early childhood and pre-kindergarten. And they're feeling that any resolution passed by the board is a governing document authorizing action, and that it is this resolution that should include language that includes pre-K and early childhood. I don't know how that fits in. I got the answers on it, but should there be any wording in there for early childhood and pre-K? And I would hope that we would also share with the public the plans for early childhood and pre-K if we get a chance here.
Yeah, I would have to look through the resolution. Right now, though, the plan is that early childhood will follow whatever K4 does in terms of in-person, hybrid, or distancing. So I don't think it's necessary to include in the resolution because we're going to be following that regardless. Oh, and then the second part to your question, Arlen, there are a lot of different areas that we need to give more details about. Not only in early childhood, but what our classrooms will look like. Some of the questions that were raised earlier about recess and whether or not we use playgrounds and how do we use technology, those kinds of things. Our primary focus tonight is to make sure we know what the initial planning model is, because I think a lot of people are waiting for that answer. But we are working on all those other plans, and we'll definitely share the early childhood planning and other relevant things at the next 1 or 2 board meetings.
Thank you. Janie?
I actually was gonna maybe wait till the motion was made, but maybe quickly, Carson, can you just comment, again, in the resolution, I think I can compromise on this a little bit if we have a set date that we're gonna review this, as far as like, a special meeting, or when, as a board, we're gonna review it, as far as the September 28th or September 21st, but I guess tell me what your thoughts are on the current resolution the way it is. Do others, or you feel that that is stated explicitly that we are going to have it on the agenda again?
Yeah, I don't believe it says it specifically in the resolution, but if there was a motion, certainly there could be, I move to attach the resolution and to instruct me to bring it back for board review on September 28th, for example.
Right, because as I look at that last whereas in the resolution, there is that part about the school board designating, sorry, I'm on a full screen now, so I got to exit it, but something about, I'll look for it really quick here. The school board desires to clarify decision-making processes related to COVID and based on a model resolution recommended by MSBA. So that's where I kind of didn't know if that's where it could be put in, or if there, that's just my main concern, is that we have a plan going forward to review that set, so we're not, so parents know that and the board is aware of it.
Yes, that could either be, included in the resolution in that area or another area, or at least made explicit in the motion.
Okay.
Thank you. Great comment. Holly?
Yeah. Thanks, Pam. I'm not concerned, Karsten, that you will not call for a special meeting if you need it, if numbers go up, or if we find that it's not working the way we wanted. I'm not concerned that we have a deadline date, because I know that you and the administrative team are putting every ounce of your effort into making sure that this works as well as can be expected. Mm-hmm. So I do believe that that's what everybody's heart and soul is telling you, in terms of let's look at this scenario, let's look at that. And I do trust that if something comes up, that your team and you will absolutely put everything on the table and start to think about what do we do next. I have no question that that's what you and your team are doing. My concern is basically what it's always been. And whose kid, whose parent, whose grandparent is it going to be? Because Shonda said it's not if somebody gets sick, it's when. So I go back to that. It's when and who is it going to be? And so I do want to say I do appreciate all the work that you and your team have been doing. I don't question that at all. I just fear for who it could be. So thank you.
Yeah, and by the way, thank you for that, Holly. And obviously, COVID presents so many challenges, that have significant health ramifications, life or death decisions. And so we don't want to make these decisions lightly. And I know the school board and administrative team have been weighing a lot of perspectives, a lot of good perspectives. Safety has to be first. Learning obviously is important too. So it's just a matter of where we start. I do want to be forthright, in terms of, what happens between reviews by the school board. If there is a designation by the state, for example, that there's a recommendation to go from hybrid to distance, I will very highly likely follow that recommendation unless there are some extenuating circumstances. For example, if the increased rates were due to a virus outbreak in a nursing home, for example, in another community with very few, if any, ties with Red Wing. If that's causing the COVID rates, that's something we need to at least consider. But generally, I will take a very careful approach to making adjustments in the learning scenario for exactly the reasons that Holly mentioned. And at the same time, even if I go to a more careful scenario, it's still, all of that information will be shared with the board because ultimately the board can make the decision as far as, what learning model we're going to be implementing.
Thank you for that. And I would fully expect that if there is an outbreak, that we act sooner rather than later. So it's good to hear that. Heidi.
Yes, I'm going to speak to the resolution. I'd like to see that flexibility retained. I think it gives us an advantage because the situation is so fluid. I'd hate to have us put down a date because I'm expecting we'll be consulting and having dates that, we don't know when we need to know the next piece of information. And so back to that trust of everybody's going to keep an eye on this. We're going to get regular updates. So I actually think the flexibility of not nailing down a date gives us an advantage because I think it just makes the document clunky. And again, I think the biggest issue is trusting the administration that we're working in partnership on this because it's really, really important. Thanks.
That's a really good point too, Heidi. One of the things that I've spoken to Superintendent Anderson about is, his regular contact with each administrator within the building too, to make sure that they're in constant contact. If anything has changed, whatever needs that they have comes forward right away. We don't wait for a Friday meeting before you bring up a concern, or you don't wait for the next school board meeting to bring up a concern. We need to be in real time and make sure that we're addressing things as they happen. So I agree with that as well. Mike, you're next on the queue.
Yeah, I was just wondering if the occasion presents itself where a student decides that they don't want to wear a mask, do we have any remedies for that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question because I know that other school districts are discussing that too. A week from now, I'll be presenting the COVID-19 face coverings policy that the School Board Association developed. And so we'll be reviewing that first with the policy committee and then the school board the same night. Our expectations is that the kids and staff members wear their masks and we know that it's the right thing to do. I have a good faith in our student body that that in the end that they too will understand its importance. I think actually kids want to be in school, and so they're going to do what they can to make that happen, and that's what mask wearing and social distancing, washing your hands, just like Shonda said. For those who decide not to follow that policy, on the bus or in the school, then we'll have to implement consequences. But really, our first tact is to explain, work with, and make sure that it happens that way. But yeah, our school is going to be for people who wear masks, unless they have exceptions provided through their IEP, and so that's what we're planning to do.
I do have one quick question about a mask.
The adoption.
Oh.
Who's got a question?
Can I just ask Shonda one question quick, Mike?
Yep.
I do have a quick question for you, Shonda. In terms of working in healthcare, when two people are wearing mask to mask, as I understand that the transition concern is really low as long as everyone is masked. Is that correct? That cuts down on transmission and having to pull kids out of class if everyone's masked, right? Mask to mask is pretty safe. Safer.
It's safer, but the county is still considering anyone within 6 feet close contact, regardless of mask wearing. So if we have masks, it's going to help, but it's still, they're sticking to the within 6 feet for 15 minutes as close
Okay,
contact.
thank you for clarifying that for us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, Mike, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Now I'll make the motion for the adoption of a base learning model for the 2021 school year and other COVID-19 related matters.
I will second. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Heidi. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I was going to second the motion.
Well, and I get
Jim. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Oh, what a long discussion here to get to a motion. I will support this on, but I do have kind of a concern, and it really depends upon the superintendent. Since this is basically 60% e-learning, we learned last year that e-learning was okay for some, not others. It struggled time-wise and that. I would like to have us get some type of information back to us and how the district is going to follow along to see that the district learning is actually successful, working, instead of not just generating based upon complaints that people call in to do. Some type of plan, or the district, you probably have discussed this, so share with us how you're going to foresee the implementation of the e-learning on the other days when they're not in hybrid, and thus how they're going to do it, so we don't have to wait for parents or children to notify us that it may not be working or it is. So I'd like to have that, not tonight, our next meeting, one of our next meetings, to go forward as to how we as a district are going to be proactive to make sure it's a success for our students.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Jim. First, we want to acknowledge that there was, good work done last spring, but I think everyone, staff members, school board members, community members, parents, all of us know that we can and should do better. There's a friend of mine who had a friend who really called last spring crisis learning. We had 10 days, 8 to 10 days to come up with a plan. We had to distribute computers, etc. We made it through, but this year it's going to be true distance learning, and we need to up our game accordingly. So part of that is setting expectations for teachers, but then part of it, as Jim said, is how we're going to proactively monitor that it's being done well. So we can certainly bring that up either this coming meeting or perhaps the one right after that, but that'll be forthcoming.
Yeah, that's fine. First Tuesday in September, first day of school, is fine as to how we're going. Give you some time to sift through it to see that it's a nice document for everybody to understand. Thank you.
Sounds good.
I asked the same thing, Jim, and I think it's really important to make sure that we are also supporting teachers who may be finding this work with distance learning a bit daunting. I mean, we really need to make sure that we're supporting our teachers as well. And so if our students are not getting the experience that they need to learn, what more can we do to support our teachers to make sure that they have the tools that they need at hand to deliver a good education? And if the kids aren't getting it, the teachers need some more support. So I fully support that, Jim.
Yeah,
Janie?
and it wasn't, excuse me if I may, it wasn't going against anything that anybody's done.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, we've had 2.5 months to learn. Now we've had 3 months to study it. How can we make it better? Because it does need to get better. Because we always want to improve.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nothing against anything. Anything we can do to make it better for all, bring it on.
Absolutely. Thank you. Janie.
Yep. Again, I'm going to bring up just my concerns about having a date that we make a decision on, that we're going to reassess about moving into an in-person school if the numbers stay the same. Again, I completely agree that Karsten, Superintendent Anderson, is going to keep things safe, and he is going to move us in the direction that we need to if we need to be more restrictive. But as many of you know, I just want to state publicly, like, we've had about 47 to 50 emails I've received since Governor Walz, made his recommendation. And I had very much half and half of parents that want in-person learning versus hybrid learning. And many of our surveys showed that parents want this, and parents are in a hard spot right now, whether it be working or such. And I feel like we need to at least give them a date to show that we're taking it seriously, that if cases stay the same way, same number that they are now, that we are seriously going to consider changing our in-person offerings if again, we're safe. So I just would ask, I don't know if that's a friendly amendment or what we could do right now, Mike or Heidi, I'm not sure if you would be willing to do that, or if others would like to discuss that, but I really feel like it would be helpful to put in that resolution that we're going to look at this, whether it be September 21st or 28th. I just feel like we can give it 3 weeks, see how things are going. And then we show parents that we are going to listen to them and carefully consider going on. So I don't know if anybody else can share their opinion on that or not.
I think that we'll be reviewing, the superintendent will be reviewing the COVID cases every 2 weeks. Would that be every rolling 2 weeks, Karsten, or not? And so we will be reviewing it constantly. I don't think we need to set a drop date for deciding yes or no, because it isn't. It's, 3 weeks is not nearly long enough. If I thought that the winter break would be a good time to go over things and see what's going on, but I really don't think we should tie ourselves down to, there's no telling where cases are going. We got 250,000 people coming out of South Dakota going to who knows where. And there's just too many people who are not taking care of the rest of the people on this planet. So, but 3 nearly enough. The winter break is an obvious point, but I don't think we need to add a date at all.
Holly?
Thank you. I was thinking about the plan for distance learning for kids whose parents are opting them into distance learning, or if we have to go in that realm. And I want to know where we're at with teachers being prepared in some capacity to do distance learning if they're not the teacher that's doing in-person learning. Like who is going to be the distance learning? Have we decided on Edgenuity? Because it's not on the agenda and we don't have to talk about it tonight, much like Jim said, but I have some real reservations with that. And so teachers that have emailed have said, what about you designate one teacher per grade level to be the distance, in elementary, to be the distance learning teacher, so that they're not taking on, 2 double duties. So I have some strong reservations about Edgenuity, but I don't have strong reservations about our teachers being able to perform that if they're not overloaded. So we're looking at 2 things: the kids that are going to be opted out of going to hybrid learning, and then, if we have to move into distance learning, what is that going to look like? So like I said, it's not something we have to address tonight, but there are people right now, whether or not the board votes on hybrid, they're not going to send their kids to school. So they need to know, like, who's their teacher going to be? Is it going to be somebody that they can contact, right on the phone, just like every other kid? So.
Yeah, and Jess Whitcomb can provide greater information, but I can give a quick summary because that's been kind of debated back and forth within our administrative team. Originally, we thought that we would identify some teachers who could serve as online teachers for the kids who choose an online only option. But then it became apparent that first, we wouldn't know that student count early enough. And then second, kind of in line with what Shonda was talking about earlier. We know that there are going to be kids in and out of this quarantine situation for a semester, maybe for the whole year. And so even if we had some kids designated as the online teacher, or if we had a teacher designated as online teacher, we would still have other teachers who would have to interact with their students via distance learning. So in the end, we decided that we would have all teachers with, assigned kids, and then some of them will be remote learning and some will be in class. Certainly not perfect, but we thought that it was lesser of two evils. And by the way, and I'm not criticizing the state when I say this, but the state came out with planning documents and the word distance learning was used in multiple ways. So what I'm trying to get in the habit of doing is distance learning is one of the three learning models that we've planned for, in-person, hybrid, and distance learning. And that's something that the whole school decides, or maybe a grade or a class or something like that. But we make that decision. In addition to that, parents have the ability to take an online only option. And that's kind of what Holly was describing. When, a parent decides, online only for a semester or for the year, we do have two online only options. One is through a program called Edgenuity. It's a full-blown online curriculum. The other option, and that's taught by Edgenuity teachers. The other online only option would be taught by our Red Wing school district teachers. And so that would be in conjunction with a with a teacher in the classroom, and then they would be working with kids in the classroom as well as these kids who've chosen that online only option. So that's kind of our plan now, but I have to be honest with you, Ollie, we've gone back and forth on that. But right now that's at least the option where we are. And I don't know if Jess is able to provide some additional insights, but Jess, feel free to go ahead.
I feel like you wrapped up pretty much what we have gone back and forth on, but that was definitely something that was brought up by a teacher right away, Holly, that we had considered, and a lot of schools are considering that. Some of that, though, is the back and forth. That is going to have to be the in-between, and if we put all of certain kids that are assigned to one teacher, the other teachers are going to also need what you're talking about, that professional development, to go back and forth and be able to meet the needs of all kids. So we decided, like, then if it's that every kid is assigned to a teacher, then they at least develop that, even if they have to go back and forth with distance learning, they develop that relationship with that one teacher, and you still have that Red Wing kind of camaraderie. So even if you have to be a distance learning this year, you can come back and you can say, I saw my friends' faces in the computer and I got to know my teacher. So that's the benefit of using the Red Wing option. The Edgenuity option is for parents who might have looked at Connections Academy and thought that that was what they were looking for. We wanted to provide that option for parents that wanted to opt into that would be still through Red Wing. So I think that that's the difference between the two, is you would be locked into Edgenuity. The Red Wing version of distance learning, you would be able to go back and forth. And I've been talking with a lot of parents and explaining the intricacies of both, and the benefits and the downfalls of each model.
So we don't necessarily have a decision on the table about if we're going to assign one teacher to do online learning. It's still being tossed around.
I would say that we're also looking at the capacity of staff and how do we utilize staff in the best way possible. So that's kind of still why it's up in the air. It's not that we haven't made the decision of that we need to go and utilize our teachers this way. We also have to meet and accommodate the needs of staff that they bring up to us that we don't necessarily know yet.
Okay, so I'm just hearing it's not a hard and fast decision yet, and there's time for it to percolate still.
So some of the things that we're doing is to kind of listen to our experts in the classroom and our experts in the community. We had a good discussion today with about 45 teachers to how do we best do this. And I think we wanted the structure to be able to do that well before we had the discussion. But we went with it today, and it was really good to hear them all in the same space instead of separately. We've heard a lot of feedback separately, but all in the same space. We did a lot of brainstorming on how is this going to look best. And the reason it's not all set and in as decisions is we want to utilize our experts and make sure that we get really creative about how we do that. Tomorrow actually we'll bring in some community members to do the same thing and to get creative about how we do possibly the hybrid and how do we meet those needs in the community while we're maybe not able to have them in an actual building. How do we do that well?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And Arlen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to, we were talking whether we need to have a comeback to the board date on taking a look at changing the model we're in. I don't feel it's necessary. I expect as a school board member, every regular meeting, we're going to get an update on how things are going. And we as a board have the authority to change this anytime. If all of a sudden the stars are lining up right, there's no COVID cases, nobody's had anything for whatever period of time, a board member can make that motion at any time to change any regular meeting to change to something else, whether it gets a second and 2 more votes, I don't know, but that option is always available to the board at any meeting. And I would expect, and I trust that we will be getting regular updates at our board meetings. If they aren't, you're going to be hearing from me because I expect it. But I do think we need some certainty to the people, our families that are sending our kids to school. How are we starting our school this year? And I don't want to be changing every other week from hybrid to full in student or anything else. So I'm in full support of starting with the hybrid and without a timeline, but I fully expect to be reevaluating it. And I think every board member does as we go on. And when somebody feels it's time to make a motion, if the votes are there, we will make the change. So that's my input.
Thanks, Arlen. And again, I'll say that I have asked our superintendent and his administrative team to make sure that they are constantly monitoring and talking to each other about the numbers, where we're at, and to already be planning for. I mean, right now we're planning for the hybrid model, but at some point we do need to talk about a transition back to full in-person learning. We're very hopeful that the hybrid is not how our world is going to go. I think I can speak for a whole lot of people when I say Pam Rowe and her kids and all of my neighbor kids, they want to go back to school full time. Absolutely, we want to get there. But the world is not working that way to be able to provide that in a safe manner. And so I am in full support of starting the year in our hybrid model. And right now, the motion on the table that Mike made is to approve the attached resolution adopting a base learning model for the 2020-2021 school year and other COVID-19 related matters. Mike made that motion and Heidi seconded it. Do we have any other discussion before we take a vote? Do we want to read the full resolution or direct people?
Just call the question.
No.
We've been
Okay.
beating it around too long.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so the motion's on the table. I will call a roll call vote. Mr. Derricks, you are up first.
What a privilege to be the first yes.
Ms. Fair.
Aye.
Ms. Fair?
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Ms. Tower?
No.
Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
And chair votes aye. So the resolution passes 6-1. Thank you. I know it's a big decision, and I am extremely proud of our staff, our administrative team, for the countless hours I know that you've put into making this plan that is before us this evening. It's a scary time to be making decisions. I realize that. And I know that we will work together and we'll continue to monitor how our school is running, how our students are doing, how our staff is adapting, and we will persevere. So thank you. Next on our agenda is resuming in-person school board meetings. One of the things I'd like to just mention before we discuss this is that I hope the public understands that making a change from in-person to virtual meetings or vice versa isn't really as easy as just making a decision and letting it be. By law, we have to have so many days to make a public announcement. We have to be able to post it publicly. We have to make sure that there's a place where you as the public can come forward for public comment. And with COVID, all of those things have to be taken into consideration with safety in mind. And it's changing all the time. 2 weeks ago, we were all set to start reconvening in City Hall chambers, and now that has changed again. So that's not an option for us. So one of the things that we've looked at is what other spaces can we provide safe public comment, safe public audience, and where we can, the 8 of us sit together and have a face-to-face but masked covered meeting. MSBA has come out with some guidelines for us on how we can do that safely. They've suggested that we meet in person but with masks on. You can remove your mask when you are speaking. There are many other considerations to be taken into account, but the place that we have felt makes the most sense right now is the Red Wing High School auditorium. We can't make a permanent change to the auditorium right now because we don't know the schedule that space is going to be needed for other uses in the future. I do know that it's available for next Monday. And so I would like to propose that we at least meet in person there next Monday. We have enough chairs in the auditorium to be able to space people out, and we would require that everybody wears a mask in attendance. Anything else that you would add to that, Superintendent Anderson?
Yeah, I think the only remaining question would be whether or not we would allow board members to participate remotely as per that Minnesota statute.
So if any board member is uncomfortable meeting personally, they can stay home and participate virtually. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's the issue. We could just have in-person meetings, and then people working through remotely, would have to, well, they wouldn't be able to do it and still vote, essentially. So we could be in person, or we could essentially have a hybrid where we are meeting in person, but we'd allow that remote participation. I'm also assuming that if we say school board meetings, that whatever we decide, that it would also include committee meetings. But again, we could distinguish that at the board level if we wanted to. But I'm assuming it would make sense to have all meetings handled in the same way.
I know I've been anxious and awaiting for us to get back together in person. That would be my preference. Do others have any comments about meeting in person?
A couple of us.
Pam, on the agenda, it says we would be meeting at Twin Bluff.
And in the beginning, we thought that that would be a great place to meet because we could socially distance there. That is in the recommendation. In taking a closer look, I believe that Dawn Wedern has suggested that the hub to hall would be an easier venue. We could set up on the stage. We could get our equipment there easier because it's already at the high school. In the cafeteria, we've got those cafeteria tables with the small round seats. So it would also be more comfortable for us and our audience participation if we could move it to the auditorium. So that isn't a recommendation, but I think the preference would be to move to the auditorium if at all possible.
Pam,
There's
Arlen,
3 of us in the queue.
yeah.
Okay, who's up next? Arlen?
Thank you. I am opposed to this at this time, but first let's talk about some positives. Last week, we had over 300 people watching our meeting. Now that's really open and transparency in its finest for where we were just back in early winter here when we were struggling to find a location we could call our own for a meeting place in the high school and trying to figure out how we could stream this to the homes and have people involved. But with that comes also another issue if we're going to be open and transparent. Who's going to be allowed to watch our meeting and where? Are we going to say nobody can come to the meeting? We're going to meet in person, but everything's going to be virtual to them? Is that even legal? Are we going to say, well, it's a lottery, or the first people that ask can come and we'll allow 10 people or 100 people, whatever it may be? The next issue, if we have our meetings in a school building, and if we have a marathon like we had last week that went to 10:30, somebody's got to go in that building and sanitize it after we get out of there before school starts the next day. And when I see all those things sitting there, I think we need to at least let school start if we're going to be holding those meetings in our own building. Because I do have grave concerns about trying not to leave, being able to clean and sanitize after we leave. And then on the other end, if we do go to it, I think we need to realize some people may be at risk and then we do need to at least stay virtual. But I am not in favor of making a change until at least we get in school and see where things are going, or we find a site outside of our school. Thank you.
Thanks, Arlen. Holly?
It's my understanding that the city council went back to virtual tonight.
That's what I understand, yes.
Yeah, it was on their agenda that they were going back to virtual. Do you know the specifics of why they chose that?
I honestly don't. Does anybody else?
If maybe Lisa Stigurda knows, I don't know if she's had contact with the city. I do not know, but maybe Lisa does.
I do know the numbers have increased. They were looking at the data, the numbers of COVID that have increased in the community. So they made a decision. That announcement is on their website.
And so the last I heard from the board is that
looking at the data.
There's 2 of you talking.
Hello?
This is Dawn Wettern. The information on their website indicates that they went back to virtual because the increase in numbers in Goodhue County, specifically in this area. So that is the announcement on their website.
Thank you, Dawn.
So they were going to meet, but they decided not against it.
They have been meeting in person for the last month, though.
Yeah, they've been meeting for the last several meetings. They've been meeting in person. They just decided either Thursday or Friday to change tonight's meeting back to virtual.
Okay, thanks.
Heidi, do you have something to share, add?
Yeah, I just feel like this puts me in a tough situation. I've been maintaining distancing for a lot of my life, and that means not going places. So I feel like I'm caught between some of the stuff Arlen said about who gets access, how are we managing public participation, how many people, And I'm just not comfortable meeting in person right now, and for health reasons. So I feel like, well, if I have to make this decision, I'm going to do what's best for my household. But that to me also puts me in a spot of, I think the optics are going to be really bad for me if I'm not at a board meeting physically with everybody else. So I'm really uncomfortable. I'm not sure that separate but equal is the way to go for our board. I don't think that's, I think the public, again, as Arlen stated, there's some issues with, you know, we have staff with underlying conditions. Are they supposed to live report now? I don't know. There's just a lot of pieces. And I did want to have a remedy for, if you're going to do this virtual participation, try to do in person, but add a virtual component. What is our path to public access? I think there's the electronic access, there's the in-person access. I just think there's a lot of issues, and I'm not really happy to be in this position. Thanks.
Jim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Government was made to be open as much as you can possibly be without closed sessions. I get the idea we're in unusual times. But let's just face it, Arlen was wrong. It was 11:15 last week we got done, not 10:30. So we took a lot of time. And this is showing these virtual meetings to make the motion that we had one of the first things on the table took us until 8 o'clock to actually pass it. People are can watch. That certainly is an advantage for them now. We never did have a large participation at our meetings unless there was an issue. So I think people would still be interested if we had it going back to the way where they could watch the videos. I'm open to any idea on it. I think we have to get back to in person eventually. This has taken way too long at times, and we need to get back to where we were when it's safe. If it's now, it's not the nighttime, that's fine. But we need to be more aware that we can conduct the business in the open session and be as effective or even maybe more effective once we get back in person. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank
Janie.
you, Madam Chair. So I just have a question. Can you share a little bit, are we able to be in person but have those board members that need to be virtual? Because I want everybody to be safe. But I do add that I think it is valid that if we're going to ask people to go into the school, which I have just voted to do, I think this is an important time to be showing that it can be safe with masks and that we can sanitize as needed. So I just put that different perspective out there, not to shame or make anybody nervous, or because I want people to be safe, but we just have to be real about that. Karsten, can you share though, or Lisa or whoever it is, about what that virtual, I mean, if we can have people in person and those that need to be virtual?
Yeah, legally we can. It's as per Minnesota statute 13D.021, it gives us options. If we do have in-person meetings with the remote access as a possibility, then either a board member, superintendent, and or legal counsel needs to be present in the building. And then, you know, the public could come in and watch proceedings from there. But then we could also have board members participate remotely, which gives them the right to vote on particular motions. So I think the key issue is that regardless of what we do, we want to make sure that everyone can hear each other and can be heard during the meeting. So that's the key part. It's a little more complicated to set up if we have in-person meetings with participating remotely, but we'll definitely try to figure it out so that everyone can participate in some way or another.
Heidi.
I knew the framework was going to be used, that you know, we're inviting staff and students back into the building. I I framed it a different way because I think that's the way most people think about it. But from my understanding, I'm coming from the framework of as an employer. Many people. And I think we still should be following the governor's guidance about mitigating risk where we can. So if you are a teacher in a classroom, we are mitigating that risk with social distancing, time, stretched over, exposure to kids and stuff like that. The way we mitigate risk about office business meetings is to meet remotely, virtually. One large employer at least committed to following that model for the employees that can do remote work, that through January. Two other Twin Cities employers that I've spoken with, people who work there, they are committed to that format until January. So I realize we can't make everything okay for everyone, but I think we did have a duty, and we continue to have a duty to have meetings and work remotely as much as we can, again, to mitigate risk. And that's one of the other pieces I forgot to mention earlier, so I just wanted to add that.
Mike.
Yeah, I think Arlen has a great point about our meetings going on so long, and I would, wearing a mask and taking it off to speak and putting it back on when you're done speaking kind of violates what they say you should be doing with you wearing a mask. But what also it strikes me wrong is the auditorium is a cavern, and we're going to have 7 of us, 8 of us up there on the stage, and then people sitting spread out in the audience. I don't think it will sound good. I don't think it will look good. We used to have meetings in the Little Theater, which could do the social distancing aspect of it, although we might be too tight on the stage. But I don't think that holding our meetings, wearing masks, taking them off to speak in a room as large as an auditorium, in a musical auditorium, is going to be a good look or sound for the board. And again, waiting until January makes a lot of sense to me. I don't, these meetings have been going incredibly long, but it's because everybody has a lot of questions about what we're doing. So that's good, but I'm sure that they will continue to be going on long times when as we get into the school year and we find out what else is going on. And we'll want to have, like Heidi said, people presenting to us as to what's going on, what they're doing in class, how it's going. It's just it's a really convenient way to be able to get everybody together and be able to see them without masks on, covering their faces. And until such a time as the COVID numbers decrease significantly, and again, I just don't like the idea of speaking in that large auditorium and having it echoing around in there. I don't think you'll get a good performance out of the board. I don't think it'll look good or sound good. That's it.
Thanks, Mike. One of the things that I keep going back to is that we're asking our staff and our students to come back into in-person learning 2 days a week, but we're not willing to meet 2 days a month. So just food for thought. If people aren't 100% comfortable, then we shouldn't do it. But I think that we are also setting an example and an expectation. And if we're asking our staff to do that, then we should be willing to socially distance and meet in person too. That's my feeling. In the city council chambers, when they were meeting in person, they they socially distanced up front. They allowed 20 people into the chambers, and then everybody else could listen in the back hallway. That's how they worked around that to make sure that everybody could listen and participate. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I think there's a way that we could make it work. If we're worried that we can't sanitize that area that we work in, then we shouldn't be sending kids back to school, because if we can't sanitize an area that we've spent 2 hours in or 3 hours in, how are we going to make sure that our classrooms are safe too? I think our staff is up to that task. Jim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Oh, am I off? Thank you, Madam Chair. I couldn't remember if I was muted or not. I think it's a good dialogue to have. I think it's something we should revisit on a regular basis. It's now August. I get both sides of the issue. I want people to be comfortable going back. I'm comfortable. I'm besides Ireland, the oldest one here. So whenever people are ready, I'm not going to force anybody to go back in person, but we do have to come back sooner or later to get back to conducting business as a school board in an in-person setting, which the government's really designed to do. And I just asked, what is it now, August? Our first meeting in October, revisit to see how we're doing, if that's what everybody wants to do. Or September, whatever you feel it should be, Madam Chair. I think it's, we just asked to put it on there to have this dialogue. So thank you.
Absolutely. I think, well, and we've talked about, just kind of taking it as a week by week basis or a meeting by meeting basis. So there is a recommendation on here. Does anybody want to make a motion? Arlen, you have a question or comment?
Well, I didn't think it sounded like anybody was going to make a motion, but if they do, that's fine. I guess this will be my discussion afterwards. I'm not opposed to considering going back to in-person board meetings, but without a plan in place on how each one of these things are addressed, I'm not ready for it. Give me an answer. And it wasn't that the janitors can't sanitize after we have a meeting. Are we going to have 24-hour janitorial staff? Was my point. When are they going to sanitize it? Because if we get done late in the evening and they've gone home or are going home, and then the kids are coming at 7 in the morning, when is that going to be? Address those things and stuff, and I certainly will look at it. But I do think we need to have the option for the board members that want to distance meet, I guess is the term. And I don't know where I'm on it, but I hear exactly what Heidi says. We're kind of, well, do you do it or don't you do it? And I'm probably there. So Heidi, if it does pass, you decide you want to stay home, I'll stay home to keep you on company at my place. Thank you.
Jeannie.
Well, I guess I would just propose this. Possibly could Carson come back? I mean, we're meeting again Monday night. I mean, maybe Carson can come back with a much more detailed plan of, will custodians be in place? Is the technology going to work? Just some more detailed plans to make all of us that maybe have some of these questions just get some of those answers. Because I want to be sensitive to everyone to have this be a team thing, but I also, agree that we just have to move forward and start being a leader and just doing what we're asking our staff and students. But we have to do it in a safe environment, and that's fine. So if Carson, I would just ask if Carson could come back, Monday night with a much more detailed plan. Maybe that could help some of us feel more comfortable about it.
I can certainly, ask our tech team to come up with some solutions. I do post the board packet on Wednesday, so I'm not sure if I'll have enough by Wednesday. If you don't mind kind of a late submission, perhaps on Thursday or Friday, we can do our best to see what we can do.
I think that sounds really reasonable. If everyone's okay with that, we'll pull that recommendation and add it to the next agenda.
Thank you, Pam. I would be in favor of that.
Yep. All right. Thanks. Any other discussion?
Pam, this is Arlen here. I would rather have our staff have time to do a thorough plan for us instead of forcing it for the next meeting. I just think that's asking a lot to come up with something in 4 or 5 days to come back to us. I just think that's wrong. I would rather see at least a little more time for them to do their work because they're in the middle of many other things too. And even if they didn't, 3 or 4 days is not a lot of time to prepare a plan. Thank you.
I'd agree. And I think that, our next meeting after Monday is the following Monday with staff evaluation workshop. So perhaps by September 8th would be our next meeting. So maybe by a recommendation by then. Holly.
Thanks, Pam. I'm not speechless, but I'm kind of speechless. We vote for people to go in and teach with a mask on for 6 hours, but we find that complex for us. So I would have voted no for us to go in-person meeting right now if we were to have had a vote. I feel the same about all of you as I feel about every person in the community. So that's just where I stand on this, but just listening to the dialogue was really eye-opening. So I'm glad that you brought it up, Jim.
All right. Anything else on meeting in person? All right. Seeing no other discussion, we'll move to the next item of business, which is high school sports, fall sports and coaches. Mr. Hartman.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your work. It's lots of hard conversations and positive conversations have come over the last number of weeks, and I'm happy to be a part of those conversations here tonight. Being somewhat of a veteran of these virtual meetings, can somebody just raise their hand if they hear me at this point? Very good. Okay, thank you. It's good to see everybody here tonight. If you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen and just present on some of the latest from the Minnesota State High School League. I will try to keep time is of the essence here. It has been a long evening for all of you, so I will try to keep my comments short, but also be as relatively thorough as I can be. So we've been meeting as Big Nine activities directors all summer long. I've been meeting with the Minnesota State High School League as well all summer long. Certainly with Governor Walz's plans with the Department of Ed, we have been given a task to return to participation. The State High School League met on August 4th and came out with their recommendations for schools. I cannot see you right now because I'm looking at my screen, but can somebody give me a verbal, you can see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, very good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. I think it's important here that we keep in mind that the Minnesota State High School League and here in Red Wing Public Schools is we provide education-based activities. The foundation of everything we do is educationally based. We are not professional sports. We are not collegiate sports. We are educationally based, and the social emotional impact that our coaches, our teachers, our staff have on our students is daily. And we as coaches and as activity staff believe that our day, which will be a little bit later this year with the move to the high school later in the day, is an extension of the classroom. Our students learn on our courts, on our fields, in our pools, on our ice sheets, on a daily basis from our coaches and our staff. So I just want to kind of preface that, this brief presentation with that. We are an extension of the school day. The Minnesota State High School League, just like this board here tonight, was faced with a daunting task of how do we provide educational-based activities within this framework of COVID-19. And as they did that, there was a series of task force throughout the state that were looked at from the financial aspects of the State High School League, as Mrs. Jones commented on at a board meeting a couple weeks ago, as well as how can we return to play. And these were their guiding principles. I will not read them verbatim, but it was a basis of obvious health and safety, which has been a common theme here tonight, aligning with state organizations, specifically the Department of Ed and the Department of Health. How can we provide that education-based participation in each sport and activity, which I'll comment here in a little bit. Equity and fairness from district to district, from different landscape in the state of Minnesota, southern Minnesota to northern Minnesota, those financial implications that I mentioned earlier, and then how can we be as consistent as possible in applying these COVID-19 guidelines with this ever-changing world that we are in. Moving forward, the State High School League, and as you well know, as we talked about with hybrid and distance and in-person learning, this is going to change, and we need to be fluid, and we need to trust one another, and we need to be ready to move on a moment's notice. So everything, all aspects of all of our activities, athletics in this particular case right now, meetings, practices, competitions, transportation, facility usage must align with these entities as you see listed here. The Department of Education and our plan for returning to learning, which has been outlined both at last week's board meeting and here tonight. The requirements from the Minnesota Department of Health's guidance on youth sports, and I will use that as a caveat to say that we have been adhering to those guidelines with community ed this summer and the numerous activities that we have seen both within our youth associations, as well as some of our high school kids working with our coaches with community ed. And then obviously any required actions identified in the governor's executive orders. I think it's an important point there that you see at the bottom in bullets, and I do apologize. I have added some words to the slides here today as we got home late from a Big 9 meeting on Friday, and I was unable to get that to Superintendent Anderson when he posted this on early Friday afternoon. But all games will be suspended for districts that are required to be in distance learning models. Now, that's when they're required. If a district chooses to be in distance learning, for example, it was announced last Friday at our Big 9 meeting that Rochester chose to be in distance learning. They could have gone to a different model, but they chose distance. They would still be able to compete, but given the governor's mandate, if they are required to be in distance learning, any competitions within that school will stop. So in looking at, the hard task for how do you be consistent, but yet, truly understand that some activities are different from one another. And I know that some of you have already seen these slides, and I appreciated some of your questions this afternoon via email. But the return to participation for these activities you see here: girls tennis, boys and girls cross country, girls swim and dive. Length of season reduced by 20%, number of competitions by 30%. No scrimmages, no large invites. We're not going to have the 15 teams coming to Red Wing High School and running like on homecoming like we've had in the past, at least for this year. We hope to get back to that near and soon. 2-team maximum for girls swim and dive, and just in bold there and underline, this is new to your board packet. At our meeting on Friday, we decided that all meets for girls swim and dive this year will be virtual, meaning we swim against Faribault on a Tuesday. They're going to stay in their pool. They're going to swim. We're going to stay in our pool. We're going to swim. We'll have timers. We'll have officials. We'll compare. We'll still get to compete, but those will be virtual. As you can see within this presentation, as of right now, that is the only activity that will be inside moving forward for this fall-based season. 3-team max for cross country, and a start date for all of those activities will be this coming Monday, the 17th, same day as our next board meeting. Girls and boys soccer. It's an outdoor activity. Activity will begin on Monday, the 17th, as was previously scheduled. Like the previous activities mentioned, 20% reduction in number of weeks, 30% reduction in number of competitions, 1 to 2 games per week. Competition is limited to conference or district scheduling. It was also decided, but not 100% official, that the Big 9 Conference is going to vote to keep competitions to conference only for this fall season. We will look at that further as we get into our activity season. So Big 9 competitions only. Football and volleyball. Again, given the nature of the high risk that is football is being defined by the CDC and various youth agencies, football is moving to a condensed forced season. The target dates right now, and once again, we say target dates because the situation is fluid, along with volleyball, to that condensed forced season, March 15th to May 15th. Reduction in season and competitions, just like we saw previously with those activities. No scrimmages. And we will certainly await MDH guidelines on fan capacity, transportation. I mentioned that here, but that will certainly be the case for all of our activities. And I'll just add the caveat there as well. that games will be suspended for any district that is required to be in distance learning mode or the distance learning model. If districts, once again, are, according to the data, can be in hybrid but choose to be in distance, they'll still be allowed to participate against other teams. And it's also, I should mention this as well, if we would get to a point where we are distance learning only as mandated by the governor, all practices within the confines of Red Wing Public Schools would be virtual only, much like we saw here this past spring, if our numbers happen to get to that level. And as was outlined earlier in the presentation by Shonda, chances are is we will get there at some point, but we're not there right now. This is a little interesting, and we're still working through the confines of this, both from a conference level as well as a district level. We'll be meeting as coaches to talk about this more and more, but we'll have another Big 9 AD meeting tomorrow. What the league is still working through is they're going to allow volleyball, football, and all canceled spring programs from last spring in 2020 will be allowed to practice in some capacity this fall. Again, the confines and the procedures are still being worked through by the eligibility committee at the Minnesota State High School League, but we will be allowed to do that. Now, there's certain things that come with that, right? We've been talking a lot about pods and mixing those pods up. That would certainly be a concern. If we have an athlete that is, I've already heard from some of our athletes that are considering playing a new sport because they played volleyball and football in the past. Well, they want to try something else. Would we allow them to mix? Say if an athlete was playing soccer, could they go to volleyball practice? Those are all considerations that we are working through, and we are hoping to come up with a consistent conference message. And if we are unable to do that, we will come up with a consistent district message on behalf of our coaches here at Red Wing High School. I certainly think that you get into over-specialization. I can tell you right now, as a longtime baseball coach, and certainly still having some impact in that program, that we will not practice this spring. And that's a decision that our program is going to make because we want those students to be involved in those fall activities. So those are different considerations there as they look at the potential practice model. And again, those models will be coming out from the league. Please stop me at any point along the way if you have questions, because once again, I can't see you. I am looking at my screen. The recommendations outlined here.
Paul, this is Pam. It looks like Heidi has a question. Quick.
Okay.
Go ahead, Heidi.
So this probably isn't the right time to do it, but Paul, at the end of your presentation, I understand that the Minnesota State High School League's been very focused on sports, but sports isn't all the activity that the high school league regulates. So I'd like to hear about what are the other activities, music pieces, speech or debate teams, the one-act play competition. There's a lot of people who are interested in how are we managing those types of activities too. So whenever you wrap up the sports, could you spend some time on the activity part? Thank you.
You're absolutely right. Thank you for that question. And really the guidance has not come out yet from the league on some of those activities. As of right now, if you just look at a lot of those activities you mentioned are indoor activities. Unless it's changed in the last 72 hours, visitors are not allowed inside school buildings. So, you look at, and Mr. Bowles and I have already we've come up with some plans potentially for the fall play with social distancing, if we're allowed to do that. So yes, that is a very good question, but that has not been answered by the league and or the Department of Health at this point. Does that answer, Heidi? A little bit.
Do you know when the timeline to get an answer would be, or is that just totally fluid too?
Totally fluid too.
Okay.
You look at, just for an example, we don't know, and I hate to go back to sports here because that's what the recommendations were from the league last week, but we don't know if we're going to be able to have parents in to watch their kids swim. We don't know if that's going to be allowed. And to be honest, and part of the recommendation will be to, at least to start, to not allow that, because we can allow our swimmers to socially distance up in the stands, and we're working through ways that we can stream these events for our parents and our grandparents, not only at Red Wing, but throughout our conference.
Right. And like you said, their indoor activities, the participation, the visitors and all of that. But then are there other ways that these folks can keep students engaged in that activity through some other virtual format or some other, I don't know, what are the other creative pieces? So anyway, I just wanted to let you know that there are parents, obviously in this community and others, that are also looking for guidance for those students that are passionate about those activities too. So, and you know that, and we just have to roll with it, but I know people are waiting for some information to develop about that also. So thank you.
I agree 100%, and thank you for that question. I'm hopeful that we can have our fall play in some capacity. If we can socially distance in a classroom, I believe we can socially distance to practice for the fall play, and we should be able to stream that. But again, we're working through those on a daily basis. So appreciate that question. Could somebody manage the queue for me, or should I go back to the presentation, or how do we want to proceed here a little bit? I'd see that Jim popped on, or is there a couple others?
I can manage the queue for you. Jim wanted something, but after you were done presenting.
Okay. I'll tell you what, I can finish up with these recommendations and then we can get to the coaches, if that's okay with this format. So I guess our recommendation in looking and working with the State High School League and working with the ADs in our conference and working with Superintendent Anderson and Principal Nemenich is that we move forward with these activities that are supported by the league and our conference, with the understanding that it might change on a daily basis. One of the issues that comes from this is sideline cheer. We have sideline cheer. At this point, we don't have competitive cheer. Sideline cheer will be moved to the winter and the spring. Just it's a little bit more of a high risk, and they've been more of a sideline group than they have been a competitive group. And based on where we're at right now, that's our recommendation to do that. Our attendance at games, at home games, is, again, I'm meeting with Big Nine officials tomorrow. We're hoping to come up with conference policies on that, and every school in the league is working on streaming options for fans, whether we're home or away. So I guess that will conclude sort of the league updates, and then we do have some coaches to get to, but I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hey, Paul, nice job in the presentation, and it's been a lot of work based upon the Minnesota High School League. When they met, they set down the criteria, and once they set it down, there's quite a bit of work to do to get that implemented. I'm looking at it, and it looks like it could be a new making for a 4-sport athlete. This whole process could be. So might have to move the trophy or something like that if they have to do that. It's actually kind of a positive thing, because some kids might be only participating in this one sport and always kind of want to do that, but came up that way. My question then on top of that is, has the high school league talked about sections and state tournaments at all? Going to happen, not happen, wait and see, flip the coin, see what tomorrow brings, all that?
Yes, they've talked about it. No decisions have been made. They are leaning towards having, they don't use the term section and state. They use the term culminating event. So that culminating event may be a section tournament. If you've ever been to St. Olaf for the cross country state meet, which I have, I can't imagine that's going to take place. That's, that's an assumption on this part. But again, if we're looking at doing virtual stuff with swim, could that be possible? So again, the background here is keeping everybody safe, not trying to mix too many people together. But the league also values those experiences, and they use the term culminating events. And your guess is as good as mine at this point.
And if parents are out there, anybody involved in cross country, and since we put a plug in there, my son ran in that. If you want to go see a cross country match or meet, however they call them, the River Falls one is the best one. They actually run up a stream, and it's quite entertaining to watch. Well, one last thing, and I'll let others talk. Any conversation about making up the winter state tournaments that were basically ended? Some of them ended during when this COVID-19 pandemic hit.
Making up last year's state tournaments?
The winter ones, remember when the girls and the boys basketballs and the hockey and all that was, there's no talk about resuming those because of, okay. Thank you, Paul.
Yep. Thank you.
And Holly?
I just wanted to thank you, Paul, for putting all of this together. And from my understanding, all of the camps that went on this summer went on like pretty successfully? Like coaches followed the rules and they had little groups, and is it going to be similar in these activities?
Well, I can tell you we're going to work really hard to try, right? I mean,
Right.
that's our job, right? And these coaches, they miss being around them this spring, and they saw them a little bit this summer, and they value these experiences just as much as our high school kids do. And so we will work really hard to do that. And that's just it's one of those things that's on your mind every day, just like you're going to the gas station. You better put your mask on, right? So it's a new normal, and we're working to better ourselves every day in that capacity. So yes.
Okay, because the way I see it, it's a choice. To play sports for a family is a choice, and they should be given the option.
Yeah, and that's one thing I'm glad you mentioned that as well. The league has come out with a COVID-19 document that will be provided to all families. We opened registration last week. That document was provided to us after we opened registration. So we were emailing that out today to those families that have already registered, and we will continue to do that moving forward. So yes, it is an opt-in.
Will there be a reduction on prices for people to participate in sports?
Not listed in this. That's a great question. Not listed in this document. One of the reasons for that is that, it's going to cost a little bit more with some of the COVID-19 protocols that we have to get in place for all of our activities. It's going to cost us. It might cost us a little bit more transportation to bus a number of kids to Austin for a soccer match. So at this point, the recommendation is to not do that. With that, if we are allowed home fans, just like last year, that was the pass. So if you're involved in any activity, you can attend. We don't know if that's going to happen yet, but again, we're working through those streaming options to provide to our families that can watch those games, matches, any type of competitions for free with a registered participant.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks, Holly. Arlen?
Yeah, thank you. This is kind of difficult because I know I've gone on record as being against playing fall sports. I don't feel it's a good thing. That's a negative. On a positive, I want to say something really good about what I heard about the swimming and diving team, that we can do it in our own pool, so we're not crossing our students with students from other districts. That's a plus. I don't know who was thinking, or who was making the decision when they decided to play soccer. To me, I know you aren't supposed to hit people or anything, but my gosh, I don't understand it, and I'm not in agreement with playing soccer this fall. I don't understand, and I know I haven't reached out to you. Do districts even have the option of withdrawing from the high school league? And if we did, I probably don't want to hear the answer, so probably don't answer it, because I don't think we want that discussion, because I know how negative some people are going to feel about it. But some of this just doesn't add up to me as being the right thing to do. And so just so everybody understands, I will be voting no on most of this tonight. And it's not a reflection on you, Paul. I know you're doing a great job. It's not a reflection on our students. I know they want to participate. I guess it is a reflection, but the bottom line is, I want to try to eliminate as much possible bringing COVID into our district from other districts. And if they don't have it, they're not bringing it. I get it, but I want our students in school, if there's any way we can do it with the hybrid model we got, and I'm going to err on the side of caution anywhere else. And I hope people understand that. I'm a big boy. I'm going to take the heat for saying no when I do, as I vote later on tonight. And that's the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arlen. Any other comments for Paul or questions for Paul? All right. Do you want to continue, Paul, on the coaching issue?
You want to do this one first, Madam Chair? Excuse me.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
You want to take this part? You want to do it in two parts? Should we do it in two parts? I think we're gonna vote to say if we want to follow the high school league or not. Are we doing that? I don't have an agenda in front of me. Are we just voting on the coaches?
We are only voting on the coaches.
Perfect. My mistake. I'll go back and see if I can find an agenda. So, thank you.
I think the intent here was just to provide the update, and then on the agenda, the motion is on the coaches. So I can certainly share my screen again I know it provided it to you, but I'll share the screen on the coaches. And so what the font's a little small, so I apologize for that, but I did some highlighting here. These are our head coaches in place for 2020-21. I highlighted our football and volleyball coach because they're no longer in the fall. They're moving to that fourth season. The reason I did that is because they will not be paid in the fall. They will be paid assuming we have a season in that fourth season. Our girls basketball coach was in the interim stage this past year. That hiring is in process. The position closed just over a week ago, and we will be in the process of hiring that coming up here soon once we get through some of this COVID fall related items. And then we posted our girls track and field job along with that. And then our fall coaches are listed here. The one change to your board pack, I think under assistant for cross country boys and girls is listed as to be determined. That was updated late Friday afternoon. Logan Knorr, who is going to be a new math teacher at the high school, who's got an extensive, wide, varied in the arts, academics, athletics background. He is going to be our assistant boys and girls cross country coach. So these are our coaches for not only the fall, but our head coaching list moving forward to 2020 and 2021. Along with the fall coaches, and Carson and I are talking about this, we have options on pay. Option one, and this is my recommended option, is that we pay 100% of the coaches' salaries. I think we're seeing an increased workload and some of the responsibilities that they are facing, as Ms. Tower alluded to earlier, with adjusting for COVID-19. We had a large number of our coaches, and you know, they didn't ask for anything, but they did a lot of work with our athletes this summer, and we're not compensated for that. As mentioned previously, the social emotional learning our students have with our coaches is really critical, and that's what our students missed this past spring. And then while the season is reduced by 20%, I think when our coaches are hired by us, they view themselves as a coach year-round. We have a number of coaches that coach multiple sports. We have head coaches that work year-round with our athletes in the weight room, working with them on some of their problems that they're having outside of the classroom, et cetera. So that is our recommendation. And as outlined there at the bottom, you know, if we find out September 3, October 4 that, you know, we have to cancel the season, which certainly we hope that we can revisit that. That's Superintendent Anderson and my recommendation. The other option is that we could pay the 80% because the season is reduced by 20%. So those are not only the coaches, but also the recommendations in salary stipends.
Holly, do you have something to share?
Yeah. My question was, if the district has to go to distance learning, all sports are canceled then? Is that my understanding?
Depends on your definition of cancel. We could still do the virtual coaching that we did this past spring. But in terms of us going to Rochester, no, we're not going to, right? But we can send out workouts. We can do those types of things, but it's all virtual.
Okay, so then I move to approve fall coaches as presented with 100% pay.
I'll second that. This is Janie.
All right, the motion on the table is to approve the coaches with 100% pay, made by Holly, seconded by Janie. Any other discussion?
I would just like to jump in and add that I appreciate the presentation, Paul, and I really believe that social emotional connection for our students is important. So I would like to see that maintained. And I think that's probably the most critical piece, as long as we can keep kids engaged in some sort of activity, provide those connections, relationship pieces as best we can in these really strange times. I think that's really great for kids. So thanks for being very specific about who our coaches are and working hard to fill that list. I think this is the best presented information we've had on the coaches list, and I really appreciate that this new, more transparent approach in the district too. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Nice job on on the presentation, well thought up. And I did, just so you know, I had to hit my nose hit the screen trying to read that fine print. I had to get that close. But
sorry about that.
No, it's not your fault. Nice job. Yeah, sports. Yeah, sports is part of school, part of the activities. I should say activities and sports go hand in hand with. You could do band, you could do choir, you could do play, music. However, you do or sports. So that it's all part of the culture of going through the high school. Teamwork, trusting your teammates, partners in your musical, and all that. So it's part of the school without actually being in the building and doing it. And what I like too is the most of it's outside except for the swimming. I really like the virtual part where you can. I think that was a wonderful idea that somebody thought of. You have the officials, boom, the scores are what they are. So I look forward to the kids getting back to a little bit more normalcy on part of their school day.
All right, the motion is to approve the fall coaches as presented with 100% pay, made by Holly, seconded by Janie. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, Ms. Jones, you can vote first by roll call.
Aye.
Ms. Tower?
Aye.
Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Mr. Christensen?
Aye.
Mr. Derricks?
No.
Ms. Fair? Aye. Chair votes aye, so that passes 6-1. Thank you, Paul, for the great presentation and all the great work that you are doing. I'm excited to see how our fall sports work and move forward with that. So thank you.
We are as well. Thank you for all your work. We appreciate it.
All right. Next on our agenda is upcoming meetings and future topics. Upcoming meeting, our next school board meeting is next Monday, August 17th. That will be held virtually. And so our public comment will be, it will continue to be held virtually as well. So if somebody would like public comment, please make sure to get an email to either myself or Superintendent Anderson at least 2 hours prior. You certainly have the option to read those letters yourself and attend that way. Holly?
Thank you. I would like Edgenuity to be put on as a topic specific with a detailed outline of what that looks like and how that looks. And I would also like to know the teacher setup for students who are choosing not to go into hybrid learning, but to do online. From what I heard from Jess, there was a lot of conversation going on with teachers today and possibly tomorrow. So I'd like to know how those plans came out.
Absolutely. We'll put that on the agenda for the 17th.
And professional development around the distance learning training. Like, what are they looking at for that?
Great.
Thank you.
Yep. I believe we have a finance meeting that evening as well on the 17th.
No.
No finance meeting.
No, we should be having a policy meeting though.
Policy meeting I'll get it right one of these days. Policy meeting 4:45.
End of the month.
Okay.
3:45.
3:45. Okay. On the 17th, and then a school board meeting at 6 p.m. virtually. And then we do have a workshop scheduled for August 24th. We're going to talk about staff evaluations. We might need to tweak that up a little bit and change that topic to how we're going to be supporting our staff during hybrid learning. So we'll discuss that a little bit more. Any other meetings that we would like to highlight?
Just to add that the next piece in the summer seminar series is this Wednesday. Last week was a great speaker about stress, a school board member from West Des Moines, who's also a psychologist. And then this Wednesday are breakout sessions, and you'll be connected to staff through a bunch of those too. So that starts at 6, and then the videotape is available the next morning at 9.
Okay, thank you. Holly, I see your name twice in the queue. Did I get you? We're good? Yep, okay, good. All right, and then before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I did want to bring up and let you all know about the passing of a dear former member of our school board, Steve Anderson. He served on the school board for 8 years. His term was from 2010 to 2018. And we certainly send heartfelt condolences and love to his family at this difficult time. He was a very beloved colleague of ours, and I overlapped with him for 2 years here on this board. And so we just want to take some time to remember Steve and to thank him for his service, and to let Leanne and her family know. Leanne is a district employee of ours. How much we hurt for her and her family, and definitely appreciated Steve's service to the school district.
Yeah, very well said, Pam. Like you said, he served for 8 years, and he really cared about the school and kids. And of course, we're thinking for Leanne and his kids.
Yeah, so I didn't want to leave tonight without remembering Steve and saying a few words in his memory. And with that, the last item on our agenda is adjournment.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn. This is Jim.
Jim, motion, any second?
Holly, second.
Holly, all right, and we'll do the roll call. Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Mr. Christensen.
Yes.
Mr. Derricks.
Yes.
Ms. Fair.
Aye.
Ms. Jones.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. So we are adjourned at 9:02 p.m. Only 3 hours and 2 minutes. Way to go, everyone. See you
Don't
soon.
rub it in just because it took longer last week.
No rubbing here, Arlen. Thank you for working in
Lips
my
don't fail us now.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Goodbye now.
Right.